Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Homecoming. Cole Morrison adjusted his prosthetic leg as the taxi pulled into the driveway of what used to be his sanctuary. 22 years of military service, 3 tours in Afghanistan, and a roadside bomb that took his right leg below the knee. All of it led to this moment. Christmas Eve, 2024. The house looked the same, but something felt different. The Christmas lights blinked cheerfully, mocking the darkness that had settled in his chest since the injury. Cole had been deployed for 18 months this last time. Before that, it was constant rotations, constant missions. He'd sent every paycheck home to Diana, his wife of 25 years, trusting her to manage their finances and raise their son Tyler. He'd missed birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, all for duty, honor, and family. The family he was about to see for the first time since losing his leg. Diana opened the door, and Cole searched her face for warmth, for the woman who used to write him love letters during his first deployment. Instead, he found cold politeness. "You're early," she said, not embracing him. Tyler's friends are still here. 23-year-old Tyler appeared behind her, taller now, wearing an expensive watch Cole didn't recognize. His son's eyes held something Cole had never seen before, contempt. "Dad." Tyler's greeting was flat, obligatory. The living room buzzed with Tyler's friends, young men and women Cole didn't recognize. They glanced at his military uniform, his prosthetic, and looked away quickly. Diana had prepared the house for a party, not a homecoming. Dinner was served at 8. Cole sat at the head of the table he'd built with his own hands 15 years ago, watching his family move around him like he was a stranger. Diana barely spoke, and Tyler's conversation focused on his new job at some tech startup, his girlfriend Madison, and his plans to move to California. "So, Tyler," Cole said, cutting into his prime rib, "tell me about this job. What exactly do you do?" Tyler exchanged a glance with Diana. "I'm in marketing. Social media campaigns, influencer partnerships. You wouldn't understand it." The dismissive tone hit Cole like a slap. He'd commanded men in life-or-death situations, had a master's degree in engineering, but his own son thought he was too stupid to understand marketing. "Try me," Cole said evenly. "Dad, it's complicated. You've been gone so long. Things have changed. Technology, culture, everything. You're kind of behind." Diana finally spoke. "Tyler's doing very well. He's making 6 figures already." Cole felt something cold settle in his stomach. 6 figures? From a startup? "Some people adapt," Tyler said. "Some people get left behind." The conversation died. Cole excused himself to his old study, finding it converted into Diana's craft room. His military commendations, photos from his service, certificates, all gone, replaced with scrapbooking supplies and romance novels. He returned to find dessert being served. Tyler was showing Madison something on his phone, both of them laughing. Diana was clearing plates with mechanical efficiency. "Son," Cole said, "I thought maybe tomorrow we could go to the range. I could teach you some proper shooting techniques." Tyler looked up, his face twisted with something ugly. "I don't think so, Dad." "Why not?" We used to do a lot of things. Before you decided the Army was more important than family." Cole set down his coffee cup carefully. "Everything I did was for this family." "Bullshit." Tyler's voice rose. The room fell silent. "You want to know what you did? You left us. For years and years, you just left. Mom had to raise me alone while you played soldier." "Tyler." Diana's voice held a warning, but not the kind Cole expected. It wasn't "don't hurt your father's feelings." It was "not here, not now." But Tyler was beyond caring. The alcohol, the audience, the years of resentment, it all came pouring out. "You sent money, sure. Like that made up for missing every important moment of my life. Every birthday, every game, every graduation. And now you come back broken, expecting us to just pretend you're the man of the house again." Cole stood slowly, his prosthetic clicking against the hardwood. "I served my country. I served you. Every sacrifice I made was your choice." Tyler slammed his hand on the table. "Nobody forced you to re-enlist. Nobody forced you to miss my childhood. You chose the Army over us every single time. That's not true. Tyler stood too, facing his father across the table. Isn't it? When I was 10 and broke my arm, where were you? When I had pneumonia at 12, where were you? When I graduated high school, where were you? Each question was a knife. Cole had been in Iraq, then Afghanistan, then training exercises in North Carolina. Always somewhere else. When Mom was crying herself to sleep every night for years, where were you? The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Cole looked at Diana, but she wouldn't meet his eyes. I was protecting this family, this country. Everything I did, everything you did was selfish. Tyler's voice dropped to a deadly quiet. You got to play hero while we dealt with real life. Well, guess what? We don't need your protection anymore. We don't need your money anymore. And we sure as hell don't need you. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Cole looked around the table at the faces staring back at him. His son's friends watched like this was entertainment. Diana sat frozen, her hands clenched in her lap. Madison looked uncomfortable but fascinated. Tyler, Cole said softly, I know I wasn't perfect, but I'm here now. I want to make things right. Tyler laughed, a bitter sound that cut through Cole's heart. Make things right? You think showing up broken and expecting gratitude makes things right? You want to know what would make things right? He leaned forward, his eyes blazing with years of accumulated rage. You're a burden. Get out of our house. The words hit Cole like physical blows. He looked at his wife, the woman he'd loved for over 2 decades, waiting for her to defend him, to tell Tyler he'd gone too far. Diana looked at her hands and said nothing. This is my house, Cole said quietly. I built it. I paid for it. With what? Army paychecks. Tyler sneered. Mom's been handling the finances while you were gone. Things change. People move on. Cole's training kicked in, the cold assessment of a tactical situation. Something was very wrong here. Tyler's confidence, Diana's silence, the expensive watch, the casual mention of 6-figure salaries from a startup. Get out, Tyler repeated. Go find some VFW hall to cry in. We're done pretending to be your family. Cole looked one more time at Diana. She still wouldn't meet his eyes. Without another word, Cole walked to the closet, retrieved his old duffel bag, and packed his few belongings. 25 years of marriage, a lifetime of service, and it all fit in one bag. As he reached the door, Diana finally spoke. Cole. He turned, hoping for something, anything that resembled the woman he'd married. Your disability checks, she said quietly. I'll have them forwarded wherever you end up. Cole nodded once and walked out into the December night. Chapter 2. The Neighbor's Farm. The Greyhound bus wheezed to a stop at the intersection of County Road 47 and Old Mill Road at 3 a.m. Cole was the only passenger getting off in the middle of nowhere, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder and his prosthetic aching from the 6-hour ride. The bus driver looked at him with pity as he hobbled down the steps. You sure about this, soldier? Ain't nothing out here but farmland and coyotes. Cole nodded and watched the bus disappear into the darkness, leaving him alone under a canopy of stars he'd almost forgotten existed. The December air bit through his jacket, but the cold felt clean after the suffocating atmosphere of his former home. Frank Whitmore's farm was 3 miles down Old Mill Road. Cole had met Frank during his first leave after basic training 26 years ago. Frank was a Vietnam vet who'd taken one look at the young soldier and offered him a job during his leave periods. Cole had spent countless hours on this farm, learning about life from a man who understood the weight of service. The walk gave Cole time to think. Tyler's words echoed in his head, but underneath the pain was something else, questions. How was Tyler making 6 figures at 23? When had Diana become so cold? Why had his son's resentment felt so prepared, like a speech he'd been rehearsing? Frank's farmhouse sat at the end of a gravel driveway, a warm yellow glow emanating from the kitchen window. Cole had called from the bus station, and Frank had simply said, "Come home, son." Before Cole could knock, the door opened. Frank Whitmore stood there, 68 years old and still broad-shouldered, his weathered face creasing into a sad smile. Jesus, Cole, look at you. Frank's embrace was everything Diana's should have been, warm, welcoming, real. Cole found himself fighting back tears he'd been holding since the bomb went off. Come on, coffee's hot. The kitchen smelled like bacon and wood smoke. Frank poured 2 cups of coffee and gestured to the worn wooden table where they'd shared hundreds of conversations over the years. Want to talk about it? Cole told him everything. The deployment, the injury, the homecoming, Tyler's explosion, Diana's silence. Frank listened without interruption, his face growing darker with each detail. When Cole finished, Frank was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee. "Cole," he said finally, "there's something I've been waiting to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago, but I kept hoping I was wrong." Cole felt ice form in his veins. "What?" Frank stood and walked to the window, looking out at his fields. "You remember Rick Lawson?" The name hit Cole like a physical blow. Rick Lawson, his best friend from his first unit, his best man at his wedding, Tyler's godfather. They'd served together for 6 years before Rick left the Army to pursue civilian opportunities. "Rick's been coming around," Frank said quietly. "Started about 8 months ago. At first, I thought maybe he was just checking on Diana while you were deployed, being a good friend." Cole's mouth went dry. "At first, then I started noticing patterns. His truck at your house when Tyler was at work. Staying overnight. Diana going to book club 3 nights a week, but her car ending up at his apartment complex." The room tilted. Cole gripped the edge of the table. "I'm sorry, son. I watched them together at the grocery store last month. The way they looked at each other, that wasn't friendship." Cole's mind raced through memories, recontextualizing everything. Rick's frequent calls during his deployment. Diana's increasing emotional distance over the past year. Tyler's sudden hostility. "There's more," Frank said, his voice heavy. "About 3 weeks ago, I was at Murphy's bar. Rick was there, drunk, bragging to some woman about his new lifestyle. Said he'd found a way to live like a king without working for it." "What did he mean?" Frank turned back to Cole, his eyes filled with regret. "He said he had a sugar mama, a military wife whose husband was too stupid to notice what was happening to his own bank accounts." The words hit Cole like another roadside bomb. Everything clicked into place. Diana's control over the finances. Tyler's expensive lifestyle. The 6-figure job that didn't make sense. "He's been stealing from me," Cole said quietly. "That's what it sounds like." Rick mentioned something about Tyler being finally ready to choose sides and how the kid was getting rewarded for loyalty. Cole felt something inside him break. Not his heart, but something deeper. The last vestige of the trusting man he used to be. In its place rose something cold and calculating, forged by years of combat and sharpened by betrayal. "Frank," he said, his voice deadly calm, "I need to know everything. Every detail you've seen, every conversation you've overheard, every person who's been complicit in this." Frank studied his face and saw something that made him sit back down. "You're not thinking of doing something stupid, are you?" Cole smiled, and Frank felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't the smile of the earnest young soldier he'd mentored. This was the smile of a predator. "Stupid? No. I'm thinking of doing something very, very smart." Chapter 3. The Architecture of Revenge. Cole spent the next 3 days at Frank's farm, but he wasn't recuperating. He was planning. Frank's old study became a war room, complete with a whiteboard covered in names, dates, and connections. Cole's military training in intelligence gathering and operational planning finally had a personal application. Frank had been more observant than Cole initially realized. The old farmer had kept detailed mental notes of Rick's visits, Diana's schedule changes, and even Tyler's sudden lifestyle improvements. More importantly, Frank had photos. "Started taking these about 2 months ago," Frank explained, showing Cole pictures on his phone. "Figured you'd want proof if it came to that." The photos were devastating. Rick's truck in Cole's driveway at odd hours. Diana and Rick holding hands at a restaurant in the next town over. Tyler and Rick shaking hands outside a BMW dealership. Rick apparently co-signing for Tyler's new car. But the most damning photo was from just last week. Diana, Rick, and Tyler at what appeared to be a Christmas shopping trip, all 3 of them laughing together like a family. "They replaced me," Cole said quietly, studying the image. "While I was fighting for my country, they replaced me." Frank poured himself a whiskey. "What are you going to do?" Cole had been asking himself the same question. His first instinct was violence. 22 years of military training had given him numerous ways to eliminate threats. But Rick, Diana, and Tyler weren't enemy combatants. They were something worse. They were traitors who needed to understand the consequences of betrayal. "I'm going to destroy them," Cole said simply. But not quickly. They spent years planning this betrayal, executing it piece by piece. They deserve the same consideration. Cole opened his laptop. An old military-issued device Frank had helped him recover from storage, and began his reconnaissance. Tyler's social media painted a picture of sudden wealth, expensive restaurants, designer clothes, weekend trips to Las Vegas, all funded by money that should have been building Cole's family's future. Rick's digital footprint was more interesting. His LinkedIn showed a series of failed business ventures over the past 5 years. His Facebook revealed mounting debts, 2 divorces, and increasingly desperate posts about needing new opportunities. Until 8 months ago, when suddenly Rick was posting about his new consulting business and finally catching a break. Diana was harder to trace online, but bank records would tell the real story. Cole had maintained joint accounts, and as a disabled veteran, he had certain legal protections regarding his benefits and compensation. If Diana had been moving money without his knowledge, there would be consequences. But Cole wanted more than legal consequences. He wanted them to feel the same betrayal, the same loss, the same humiliation they'd inflicted on him. On the 4th morning, Cole made his first call to Marcus Hamilton, his old commanding officer who now worked as a private investigator in Virginia. "Cole Morrison, you son of a bitch." Marcus's voice boomed through the phone. "I heard about the IED. How are you holding up?" "I've been better." "Marcus, I need a favor." "A big one." Cole explained the situation in clinical detail. Marcus listened without comment until the end. "Jesus Christ, Cole. Your own family." "Former family," Cole corrected. "I need you to run complete background checks on Rick Lawson and my wife Diana. Financial records, communication logs, everything you can legally access. I also need surveillance on all 3 of them for the next 2 weeks." "Cole, this sounds like what? Like a man protecting his assets from theft? Like a veteran ensuring his disability benefits aren't being misused? Everything I'm asking for is legal, Marcus." There was a pause. "What aren't you telling me?" Cole smiled grimly. "I'm not telling you about Phase 2. But don't worry. You'll have plausible deniability." Marcus sighed. "I'll have preliminary reports by tomorrow night. Financial deep dive will take a week." "Cole, be careful. Whatever you're planning, just remember you've got a future to think about." "No, Marcus. I had a future. They stole it. Now I just have a mission." After hanging up, Cole turned to Frank, who'd been listening from the kitchen doorway. "I need to establish a base of operations," Cole said. "Somewhere I can work without being seen. Do you still own that hunting cabin up on Bear Mountain?" Frank nodded slowly. "I haven't been up there in 2 years, but it's got power and water. About 15 miles from your old house. Good sight lines of the valley." "Perfect. I also need to make some purchases. Equipment, vehicles, communication gear. But everything has to be untraceable." "Cole, you're scaring me a little." Cole stood, his prosthetic clicking against the floor. For the first time since Christmas dinner, he felt like himself again. Not the wounded veteran limping home to an ungrateful family, but Colonel Cole Morrison, a man who had never lost a mission. "Frank, for 22 years, I protected people who couldn't protect themselves. I eliminated threats to innocent lives. I served with honor and integrity." He walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful farmland that would soon become his staging area. "But those people in my house, they're not innocent. They're enemy combatants who declared war on my life, my service, and my sacrifice. And I'm going to treat them exactly like what they are." Frank felt a chill that had nothing to do with the December weather. The young man he'd mentored had returned, but he'd brought something back from the war, something dark and precise and utterly unforgiving. "What do you need me to do?" Cole turned back to him, and Frank saw the cold calculation of a professional soldier planning an operation. "I need you to be my eyes and ears in town. Keep watching them, keep taking pictures. And Frank," Cole's smile was sharp as a blade, "I need you to forget everything I just told you. As far as anyone knows, I'm a broken-down veteran hiding in the woods, too ashamed to face his family. Let them think that, Cole thought as he began drawing up plans for his new life. Let them think I'm weak and defeated. They were about to learn the difference between a defeated man and a tactical withdrawal. Chapter 4. Intelligence Gathering. The hunting cabin on Bear Mountain had been transformed into something that would have impressed Cole's old intelligence unit. Maps of the local area covered one wall, with pins marking Diana's work route, Rick's apartment, Tyler's new job, and the various locations where Frank had photographed them together. A second wall displayed financial documents, communication logs, and surveillance photos. Marcus Hamilton had delivered more than promised. Diana had been systematically draining Cole's accounts for over a year, transferring money to Rick through a series of shell companies. Tyler's startup job was fictional. He was actually being paid through one of Rick's dummy corporations, essentially receiving an allowance for betraying his father. The scope of the theft was staggering. Over $200,000 in combat pay, disability compensation, and veteran benefits had been redirected. They'd even taken out loans against Cole's military pension. It was sophisticated financial fraud that would have required months of planning. But Cole had found something even more damaging than theft: insurance policies. Diana had taken out 3 separate life insurance policies on Cole over the past 18 months, all with Rick as the secondary beneficiary after her. Combined with the existing military death benefits, Cole's demise would net them over $2 million. They weren't just stealing from me, Cole told Frank over dinner. They were planning to profit from my death. Frank set down his fork. That's attempted murder. Not quite, but it's conspiracy to commit fraud at minimum. They clearly expected my deployment to be permanent, one way or another. Cole's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. New surveillance photos. Check your email. The photos were from that afternoon. Diana and Rick at a jewelry store, looking at engagement rings. Tyler with them, clearly giving his approval. They weren't even waiting for divorce papers. Cole studied the images with clinical detachment. They think I'm neutralized, broken, too damaged and ashamed to fight back. He opened his laptop and began typing. Over the next hour, he composed 3 different documents: a detailed financial crime report for the FBI's white-collar crime division, a military fraud complaint for the Army's criminal investigation division, and a civil lawsuit alleging theft, fraud, and conspiracy. But Cole didn't send any of them. Legal remedies would take years and might not even recover his money. Diana and Rick would hire lawyers, claim misunderstandings, drag proceedings out until Cole's resources were exhausted. No, Cole wanted something more immediate and more devastating. He opened a new document and began planning what he privately called Operation Family Values. The next morning, Cole drove into town for the first time since Christmas. His destination was Riverside Community Bank, where Diana worked as a loan officer. He parked across the street and waited, watching through binoculars as his wife went through her daily routine. Diana looked happy. She smiled at co-workers, laughed at someone's jokes, and seemed completely unburdened by guilt. It was like watching a stranger wearing his wife's face. At 12:30, Diana left for lunch. Instead of going to her usual restaurant, she drove to Rick's apartment complex. Cole followed at a distance, documenting everything. The reunion between Diana and Rick was passionate and public. They didn't even bother closing the curtains as they fell into bed together. Cole photographed it all through a telephoto lens, his face emotionless behind the camera. This wasn't about jealousy anymore. This was about evidence. That afternoon, Cole visited his old bank branch. Jennifer Walsh, the branch manager, had known Cole for 15 years. "Colonel Morrison, oh my God, we heard about your injury. How are you doing?" Cole played the role of the wounded veteran perfectly. Humble, grateful, slightly overwhelmed by civilian life. "I'm adjusting. Jennifer, I need to understand my account activity while I was deployed. Diana was handling everything, but I want to make sure I understand our financial position now that I'm back." Jennifer's smile faltered slightly. "Of course. Let me pull up your accounts." As she reviewed the records, Cole watched her face change from confusion to concern to something approaching alarm. "Colonel Morrison," she said carefully, "I think you need to speak with our fraud prevention department." Cole leaned forward. "Why? Is there a problem?" "There have been unusual transfers. Large amounts moved to accounts I don't recognize. Loans taken against your pension." Changes to beneficiaries on several policies. Jennifer looked genuinely distressed. Sir, if you didn't authorize these transactions. I didn't authorize anything, Cole said quietly. I trusted my wife to manage our finances while I was serving our country. Jennifer's face went pale. Oh God. Colonel Morrison, I'm so sorry. We should have flagged some of these transactions for review. Cole reached across the desk and patted her hand gently. You weren't the one who betrayed me, Jennifer. Can you help me document everything? For the next 2 hours, Jennifer walked Cole through every suspicious transaction. The pattern was clear. Diana had been embezzling systematically, using her position at the bank to avoid scrutiny. She'd even convinced Jennifer that the transfers were for investment opportunities that Cole had discussed with her. She said you were planning to start a consulting business when you returned, Jennifer explained. She showed me what looked like your signature on authorization forms. Cole examined the forged signatures. They were good. Diana had been practicing. As they wrapped up, Jennifer asked the question Cole had been waiting for. What are you going to do? Cole looked out the window at the town where he'd planned to spend his retirement, the place where his wife was sleeping with his best friend while his son celebrated his father's absence. I'm going to remind them that they messed with the wrong soldier. That evening, back at the cabin, Cole spread out his growing collection of evidence. Financial fraud, adultery, conspiracy, identity theft. He had enough to destroy all 3 of them legally. But Cole had spent too many years in tactical operations to be satisfied with legal destruction. He wanted psychological warfare. He wanted them to understand what it felt like to have everything they valued ripped away piece by piece. He picked up his phone and dialed a number from memory. Danny's Electronics, Danny speaking. Danny, it's Cole Morrison. I need some specialized equipment. Danny Pierce had served under Cole in Afghanistan and now ran a security consulting business that served clients who valued discretion. Colonel, heard you were stateside. What can I do for you? I need surveillance gear. Top-tier stuff. And I need it installed without anyone knowing it was ever there. There was a pause. Cole, you sure you want to go down this road? Cole smiled grimly. Danny, I've been down roads you can't imagine. This is just another mission. When do you need it done? Cole looked at his tactical calendar. Diana worked late on Thursdays. Tyler had a standing date with Madison on Friday nights. Rick played poker with his buddies every Saturday. Thursday night. I'll send you the address. Phase 2 of Operation Family Values was about to begin. Chapter 5. Psychological Warfare. Thursday night's installation went flawlessly. Danny Pierce and his team entered Cole's former home while Diana was at her late inventory meeting, actually dinner and sex with Rick, and Tyler was supposedly studying at the library, actually drinking with friends at a bar downtown. In 90 minutes, they installed 14 micro cameras, 8 audio recording devices, and a complete digital monitoring system. Everything streams to this mobile unit, Danny explained, handing Cole a military-grade tablet. Audio, video, internet traffic, phone calls. If it happens in that house, you'll know about it. Cole tested the system, watching Diana return home alone at 11:47 p.m. She moved through the house like she owned it completely, which, legally, she probably did now. She even walked past Cole's old study, now her craft room, without a glance. One more thing, Cole said. I need you to set up a meeting. With who? Rick Lawson. Tell him you represent a private military contractor looking for consultants with his background. Big money, immediate start, but he needs to come alone to discuss classification issues. Danny raised an eyebrow. Cole, I'm not going to hurt him. I just want to have a conversation. Where? Cole smiled. The Warehouse District, Building 47, Saturday at 8 p.m. Building 47 was a defunct manufacturing facility that Cole had scouted earlier. Isolated, soundproof, with multiple exit routes. Perfect for the kind of conversation he had in mind. Friday and Saturday brought a wealth of intelligence through the surveillance system. Cole watched his family's routine with the detached interest of a predator studying prey. Tyler spent Friday night with Madison, but not studying. They were planning their move to California, funded by Tyler's inheritance, money Tyler believed would come from forcing Cole out of the family. Madison was pregnant, a detail Tyler hadn't shared with anyone else yet. Diana's Saturday was more revealing. She spent the morning on the phone with a divorce attorney, discussing the fastest way to dissolve her marriage to a mentally unstable veteran who had threatened the family. She was building a narrative that would paint Cole as dangerous and unfit, justifying her theft as protection for Tyler. The surveillance also revealed something else. Rick wasn't just stealing money. He was documenting everything, taking photos of financial records, recording conversations with Diana about Cole's erratic behavior and violent tendencies. Rick was building an insurance policy against Cole's return, evidence that could be used to have Cole committed or arrested if he became a problem. By Saturday evening, Cole had everything he needed for Phase 3. But first, he had a meeting to attend. Building 47 sat in darkness as Cole arrived 30 minutes early. He'd spent the afternoon preparing, floodlights positioned for optimal psychological impact, recording equipment to capture every word, and a few props that would help make his point. Rick arrived precisely at 8 p.m., driving his new BMW, the one purchased with Cole's combat pay. He entered the building cautiously, calling out for Mr. Peterson, the fictional contractor Danny had impersonated. "Mr. Peterson? It's Rick Lawson. You said Building 47. Cole triggered the floodlights, illuminating the center of the warehouse. Rick spun around, temporarily blinded. "Hello, Rick." Cole's voice echoed off the concrete walls as he stepped into the light. Rick's face went through a rapid series of expressions: confusion, recognition, fear, and finally a desperate attempt at normalcy. "Cole, Jesus, you scared me. What are you doing here? I thought I was meeting some contractor about a consulting job." "You are," Cole said quietly. "I'm consulting on a very specific problem." Rick's hand moved toward his pocket, probably reaching for his phone. Cole's voice stopped him. "I wouldn't. You'll want both hands free for this conversation." Cole began walking in a slow circle around Rick, staying just outside the light. 26 years we've known each other, Rick. Best man at my wedding. Godfather to my son. I trusted you with my life in Afghanistan. Cole, listen. I trusted you with my family while I was deployed. Asked you to check on Diana and Tyler. Make sure they were okay. Cole's voice remained conversational, almost friendly. You did check on Diana, didn't you? Rick's face was pale under the harsh lights. Cole, I can explain. Oh, I'm sure you can. You're probably going to tell me it just happened. That you and Diana fell in love. That these things sometimes occur. That you never meant to hurt me. Cole stopped directly in front of Rick. But that would be a lie, wouldn't it? He pulled out a tablet and showed Rick the financial records. This took planning. Months of it. You didn't just steal my wife, Rick. You stole my life. Rick tried to straighten, to project confidence. Diana was lonely, Cole. You were never there. She needed someone who... Cole's fist connected with Rick's solar plexus, dropping him to his knees. It was a precise strike, calculated to disable without causing permanent damage. Wrong answer, Cole said calmly. Let me tell you what really happened. You've been struggling financially for years. 2 divorces, failed businesses, mounting debts. You saw an opportunity when I deployed, a woman with access to a military salary and a son who resented his father's absence. Rick gasped for air, unable to respond. You seduced my wife systematically, made her feel special, appreciated, loved. Then you convinced her that I didn't deserve her loyalty. You turned my son against me by playing the fun uncle while painting me as the absent father. And finally, you stole my money by making Diana your accomplice. Cole crouched down to Rick's level. But here's what you didn't plan for. I came home, and I'm not the same man who left. Rick found his voice. You can't prove anything. Cole smiled and showed him another tablet, this one displaying real-time footage from the surveillance system in Cole's house. Can't I? Right now, I'm watching Diana pack clothes for what she thinks will be a romantic weekend with you. I've recorded every phone call, every financial transaction, every moment of your pathetic little affair. Rick's face went white. That's illegal. Is it? It's my house, my accounts, my wife. Funny thing about surveillance laws, they don't protect criminals very well. Cole stood and began pacing again. Here's what's going to happen, Rick. You're going to end this relationship with my wife. You're going to disappear from my son's life. And you're going to make restitution for every penny you stole. And if I don't, Cole gestured to the walls around them. Then I'll use my very particular set of skills to make your life a living hell. I'll expose your fraud to every potential employer in the region. I'll send your recorded confessions to the IRS, the FBI, and the local police. I'll make sure everyone knows you're a predator who targets military wives while their husbands are deployed. Rick tried to stand, his legs shaky. Diana won't believe you. Tyler hates you. They chose me. Cole's smile turned predatory. Did they? Let's find out. He pulled out his phone and called Diana. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm with anticipation. Hi, honey. Are you almost ready for our weekend? Cole put the phone on speaker. Diana, it's me. The silence on the other end was deafening. Cole, why do you have Rick's phone? Because Rick and I are having conversation about my marriage, my money, and my future. Would you like to join us? Cole could hear Diana's panicked breathing through the phone. Diana, Rick called out, finding his voice. Don't come here. Just hang up. But Cole was already talking. Diana, ask Rick about the life insurance policies. Ask him about the forged signatures. Ask him about the plans he's been making for after my accident. The phone clicked off. Cole smiled at Rick. I think she'll be here soon. She needs to understand what kind of man she's been sleeping with. Rick's composure finally cracked. You're insane. You can't just. Can't what? Defend my family? Protect my assets? Stop criminals from stealing from a disabled veteran. Cole's voice hardened. You chose to make me your enemy, Rick. Now you got to find out what that means. In the distance, they could hear a car approaching fast. Chapter 6, The Reckoning begins. Diana's BMW screeched into the warehouse parking lot 23 minutes later. Cole had spent the time methodically explaining to Rick exactly how much evidence he possessed and precisely what criminal charges his former friend was facing. Rick sat on the concrete floor, his arrogance replaced by growing terror as he understood the scope of Cole's preparation. Diana burst through the warehouse door like a woman possessed, her face flushed with panic and rage. What the hell is this, Cole? Some kind of kidnapping. Cole remained in the shadows beyond the floodlights. Hello, Diana. Thank you for joining us. I thought it was time we all had an honest conversation about our marriage. Diana helped Rick to his feet, positioning herself between the two men. Rick, are you hurt? Did he threaten you? Threaten him? Cole laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Diana, I've been watching you two for weeks. I know about the money, the fraud, the forged signatures. I know about the life insurance policies. I know everything. Diana's face cycled through denial, defiance, and fear before settling on a desperate attempt at manipulation. Cole, you're sick. This deployment, your injury, it's changed you. You need help. Do I? Let's see. Cole stepped into the light, holding a thick folder. July 15th, you transferred $15,000 from my combat pay account to Rick's consulting company. August 3rd, you forged my signature on a loan against my pension. September 12th, you took out a $500,000 life insurance policy with Rick as secondary beneficiary. With each date, Diana's face grew paler. October 1st, you met with a divorce attorney to discuss having me declared mentally incompetent. October 15th, you and Rick went ring shopping. November 2nd, you convinced Tyler to participate in your scheme by promising him a trust fund. Cole opened the folder and began spreading photographs across a nearby table. Should I continue? Because I have documentation for every theft, every lie, every moment of your betrayal. Rick found his voice. Diana, we need to leave. Now. But Diana was staring at the photographs. Pictures of her and Rick together, bank records, forged documents, surveillance footage from their most intimate moments. How long? She whispered. How long what? How long have I known? About a week. How long have I been planning my response? Since the moment you chose to remain silent while my son called me a burden and threw me out of my own house. Diana's mask finally slipped, revealing the cold calculation underneath. That house isn't yours anymore, Cole. I've been maintaining it, improving it, while you played soldier. You abandoned us. I serve my country. You serve yourself. Diana's voice rose to a shriek. You chose the army over us every time. You missed Tyler's childhood, our marriage, everything that mattered. We deserved better. Cole stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You deserved better than a man who sacrificed his body for his family's security? Better than someone who sent every paycheck home? Better than a husband who trusted you completely? We deserve someone who is actually here. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Cole nodded slowly. You're right. You did deserve someone who was here. But instead of asking for what you needed, you chose theft and betrayal. Instead of honest conversation, you chose fraud and conspiracy. Instead of divorce, you chose to systematically destroy me. Rick stepped forward, trying to regain control. Cole, this doesn't have to get ugly. We can work something out. Divide the assets fairly. Set up support payments. Cole's laugh cut him off. Support payments? Rick, you just admitted to financial fraud in front of witnesses. Diana just confessed to forgery and conspiracy. You think you're in a position to negotiate. Diana's desperation turned to rage. You can't prove anything that will stick in court. It's our word against yours, and you're a damaged veteran with PTSD who just assaulted Rick and dragged me to an abandoned warehouse. Cole smiled and held up his phone. Actually, you've both been confessing on camera for the past 30 minutes. This entire conversation is being recorded and live-streamed to my attorney, my bank, and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The color drained from both their faces. You see, unlike you two, I plan my operations carefully. Marcus Hamilton, you remember Marcus, Diana, he was at our wedding? He's a federal investigator now. He's been watching this stream with a team of prosecutors. Every word you've said tonight is admissible evidence. Rick grabbed Diana's arm. We're leaving. Right now. But Cole had moved to block the exit. No, you're not. We're not finished. Diana pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. Please do. Ask for Detective Rivera. She's expecting your call. Diana hesitated, something in Cole's tone stopping her. You see, while you were planning your romantic weekend, I was filing criminal complaints. Fraud, theft, conspiracy, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Rivera's been reviewing the evidence all day. Cole's smile turned predatory. But I'm not just interested in criminal justice. I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything that matters to you. He pulled out another phone and showed them a real-time video feed. Tyler was at his apartment with Madison, both of them packing for their planned move to California. Tyler doesn't know about tonight yet. He still thinks you're getting away with this. He's telling Madison about the inheritance he's going to receive when you divorce his pathetic father. Diana lunged forward, trying to grab the phone. You stay away from my son. Cole easily avoided her. Your son? Diana, Tyler hasn't been your son for months. He's been Rick's recruit, Rick's accomplice. You turned my child into a criminal. The weight of her actions seemed to hit Diana all at once. She sank to her knees, sobbing. I never meant for it to go this far. I was so lonely, Cole. You were never here, and Rick made me feel alive again. Cole knelt beside his wife of 25 years, his voice surprisingly gentle. I know you were lonely. I know I made mistakes. But Diana, you could have talked to me. You could have asked for what you needed. Instead, you chose to destroy everything we built together. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. For a moment, Cole felt a flicker of the love he'd once had for this woman. Then he remembered Tyler's words at Christmas dinner, and the flicker died. I know you are, but sorry doesn't undo the betrayal. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I lost with my son. Sorry doesn't return the money you stole or repair the trust you shattered. Cole stood and looked down at his broken wife and her pathetic lover. You wanted me gone, so I left. You wanted to replace me, so you tried. You wanted my money, so you took it. But what you didn't want was for me to fight back. He walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the empty warehouse. Tomorrow morning, you'll both be arrested. Your assets will be frozen pending investigation. Tyler will learn that his trust fund was purchased with stolen money, making him an accessory to federal crimes. Cole paused at the door and turned back one final time. You thought you were playing with a broken soldier. You were wrong. You were playing with someone who spent 22 years learning how to eliminate enemies. Cole, please, Diana called out. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, work things out, be a family again. Cole's expression didn't change. Diana, you stopped being my family the moment you chose him over me. And I don't forgive traitors. He walked into the night, leaving them alone with the consequences of their choices and the growing sound of approaching sirens. Chapter 7. The Dominoes Fall. The arrest began at dawn. Cole watched from his cabin as FBI vehicles surrounded his former home, where Diana and Rick had returned after their warehouse confrontation. Through his surveillance system, he could see Diana frantically trying to destroy evidence while Rick attempted to contact his lawyer. By 6:47 a.m., both were in federal custody. Tyler's arrest occurred at his apartment, where he was still packing for California. Cole watched through the apartment complex's security cameras as his son was led away in handcuffs, his pregnant girlfriend Madison screaming questions that no one answered. The local news picked up the story by noon. Military wife and lover charged in elaborate fraud scheme against disabled veteran. Cole's phone rang constantly with reporters wanting his story, but he declined all interviews. This wasn't about public sympathy. This was about justice. Marcus Hamilton called with updates throughout the day. Diana's lawyer is pushing for a plea deal, Marcus reported. She's claiming diminished capacity due to emotional distress from your deployment. Rick's attorney is trying to paint him as a victim of Diana's manipulation. And Tyler's a different story. His lawyer is arguing he was a minor when some of this started, that he didn't understand the implications of what his mother was doing. Cole felt nothing at the mention of his son's legal troubles. Tyler had made his choice at Christmas dinner. What about restitution? Full restitution is unlikely through criminal proceedings, but the civil suits will be devastating. Between the three of them, they're looking at losing everything they have plus significant additional judgments. Cole hung up and returned to his planning. The legal system would handle the criminal aspects, but Cole wasn't finished with them personally. That evening, Cole drove to the county jail where Diana was being held pending bond hearing. He'd called ahead, requesting a visit as her husband. The guards, recognizing his military service and knowing the basics of his case, were more accommodating than usual. Diana looked haggard in her orange jumpsuit, her carefully maintained appearance destroyed by 12 hours in custody. She sat across from Cole at the metal table, separated by reinforced glass, speaking through the monitored phone system. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would. I wanted to see you one last time before the divorce proceedings begin." Diana's face crumpled. "Cole, please. I know I made terrible mistakes, but we can work through this. We've been together for 25 years. "We were together for 24 years, Cole corrected. "You ended our marriage when you decided to steal from me and replace me with Rick. I never wanted to replace you. I needed someone who was there." Cole studied his wife's face, seeing for the first time how much she'd changed. The woman he'd married had been strong, independent, capable of handling his deployments with grace. This woman was weak, manipulative, willing to destroy everything rather than admit her needs. "Diana, if you had told me you were lonely, I would have taken early retirement. If you had said you needed more support, I would have found a way to provide it. If you had asked for help, I would have moved heaven and earth to give it to you." Tears streamed down Diana's face. I know that now. But it felt like you loved the Army more than us." "I served the Army. I loved you. There's a difference." Cole leaned forward, his voice hard. "But instead of communication, you chose betrayal. Instead of trust, you chose theft. And worst of all, you turned my son against me. Tyler was angry about your absence. I didn't create that. No, but you fed it. You nurtured it. You weaponized it against me." Cole's eyes were cold as winter steel. A good mother would have helped Tyler understand sacrifice and service. "You taught him that betrayal is acceptable if you feel justified." Diana sobbed into her hands. "What do you want from me, Cole? What can I do to fix this?" Cole stood, preparing to leave. "You can serve your sentence with dignity. You can accept responsibility for your choices. And you can stay away from me for the rest of your life." "Cole, please. I love you." He turned back one final time. "Love doesn't steal. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't conspire. What you felt for me wasn't love, Diana. It was possession. And when possession becomes inconvenient, it becomes betrayal." Cole left his wife crying in the visiting room and drove to his next appointment. The county prosecutor's office was busy with evening shift changes, but District Attorney Patricia Kemp had agreed to meet with Cole personally. Patricia was a veteran herself, and the case had caught her attention immediately. Colonel Morrison, first let me say how sorry I am about what you've endured. This kind of betrayal of a service member is particularly egregious. Thank you. I wanted to discuss the prosecution strategy. Patricia opened a thick file. We're pursuing maximum sentences for all 3 defendants. The financial fraud alone carries up to 20 years federal time. Add in the conspiracy charges, identity theft, and attempted insurance fraud, and we're looking at life-changing consequences. What about Tyler? Patricia's expression darkened. Your son is 23 years old. He knew exactly what he was doing when he participated in this scheme. The fact that it was against his own father makes it worse, not better. Cole nodded approvingly. I want to make something clear. I'm not interested in mercy for any of them. They spent over a year planning and executing this betrayal. They deserve to face the full consequences of their choices. Even your wife and son? Cole's expression didn't waver. Especially my wife and son. They had the greatest obligation to protect me, and they chose to destroy me instead. Patricia studied Cole's face. Most victims want some form of reconciliation with family members. Most victims haven't spent 22 years learning that betrayal, left unpunished, only leads to more betrayal. Cole stood to leave. I want them to understand that actions have consequences. I want other military families to see that this kind of betrayal won't be tolerated. And I want these 3 specific people to spend the rest of their lives regretting the day they decided to steal from a soldier. As Cole drove back to the cabin, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dad, please. I need to talk to you. I'm sorry. Tyler. Cole read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Tyler had called him a burden and told him to get out of their house. Now Tyler was facing federal prison and wanted his father's forgiveness. But Cole Morrison didn't forgive traitors. He eliminated them. Chapter 8. No Mercy. 3 weeks later, Cole sat in the federal courthouse as Diana, Rick, and Tyler entered their guilty pleas. The evidence against them had been so overwhelming that their attorneys had advised against going to trial. Diana received 7 years for financial fraud and conspiracy. Rick got 12 years for orchestrating the scheme and his prior criminal history. Tyler, despite his lawyer's arguments about his age, received 5 years as an adult co-conspirator. Cole felt nothing as he watched his former family led away in shackles. No satisfaction, no regret, no vindication, just the cold completion of a successful mission. Madison, Tyler's pregnant girlfriend, approached Cole outside the courthouse. She was crying, her hands protectively covering her belly. Mr. Morrison, please. Tyler made mistakes, but he's going to be a father. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive him? Cole looked at this young woman who was about to raise his grandchild alone and felt the first flicker of emotion he'd experienced in weeks. But it wasn't sympathy. Tyler chose to betray me for money. He called me a burden and threw me out of my own home. He participated in stealing from a disabled veteran who gave everything for his country. Cole's voice was calm but implacable. Actions have consequences. Tyler is learning that lesson now. But the baby is innocent. Tyler isn't. If you need support, apply for government assistance. If you need help, contact veterans organizations. But don't expect mercy from the man your boyfriend helped destroy. Cole walked away, leaving Madison sobbing on the courthouse steps. That evening, Cole received an unexpected visitor at Frank's farm. Detective Rivera stood at the front door, her face serious. Colonel Morrison, we need to talk. Frank let her in, and they sat around the kitchen table with coffee. Rivera opened a file folder. We've been investigating some irregularities in your case, she began. The surveillance equipment in your former home, the warehouse meeting, the financial investigations, everything was perfectly legal, but remarkably sophisticated for a civilian operation. Cole waited for her to continue. Marcus Hamilton's background checks were more thorough than most federal investigations. Danny Pierce's surveillance installation was flawless. And your financial forensics were better than what our white-collar crime unit usually produces. Rivera leaned forward. Colonel, did you have help with this operation? Federal help. Cole sipped his coffee calmly. Detective, I spent 22 years in military intelligence. I have friends in various government agencies who were outraged that criminals were targeting a disabled veteran. If they provided assistance in exposing federal crimes, I can't imagine why that would be a problem. It's not a problem. It's impressive. But it also raises questions about your intentions going forward. My intentions? Your wife and her lover are in federal prison. Your son is facing years behind bars. You've recovered most of your stolen money through asset forfeiture. Justice has been served. Rivera closed the file. But I get the feeling you're not finished. Cole smiled slightly. Detective, what else would I do to them? They're already facing the consequences of their actions. I don't know. But in 20 years of police work, I've learned to recognize when someone has more plans brewing. You've been too calm, too controlled, too prepared for everything that's happened. Frank shifted uncomfortably. Detective, Cole's been through hell. Maybe he's just relieved that the truth came out. Rivera studied Cole's face. Maybe. Or maybe he's a professional soldier who knows how to execute complex operations with multiple phases. She stood to leave, then turned back. Colonel Morrison, whatever else you're planning, remember that you've already won. Don't throw away your victory by going too far. After Rivera left, Frank looked at Cole with concern. She's right, isn't she? You're not done. Cole pulled out his laptop and opened a new document. Frank, Diana will be eligible for parole in 4 years. Rick might get out in 8 with good behavior. Tyler could be free in 3 years. So they'll come back. Diana will want to reconcile, to rebuild our family. Rick will want revenge for his humiliation. Tyler will want forgiveness and support for his child. Cole began typing. I need to ensure that when they get out of prison, they understand that their punishment isn't over. It's just beginning. Frank read over Cole's shoulder as he drafted letters. Letters to be delivered to each of them 6 months before their release dates. The letter to Diana was coldly formal, informing her that he had remarried, a lie, but she wouldn't know that, moved to another state, and would have her arrested for harassment if she ever contacted him again. The letter to Rick was more creative. Cole had researched Rick's psychological profile and crafted a message designed to make Rick believe that Cole had connections in the prison system, that Cole was watching him even behind bars, and that any attempt at revenge would result in Rick disappearing entirely. But the letter to Tyler was the most devastating. Cole had researched child custody law and drafted a document explaining how Tyler's federal conviction would prevent him from gaining custody of his child, how his criminal record would follow him for life, and how his father, the man he'd betrayed, had moved on to start a new family with people who appreciated loyalty and sacrifice. Jesus, Cole, Frank whispered, this is psychological torture. This is ensuring they never forget the consequences of betrayal. Cole corrected. I want them to spend every day of their sentences knowing that their punishment doesn't end when they walk out of prison. I want them to understand that betraying me was the defining mistake of their lives. Frank sat back, disturbed by what he was seeing. What happened to you over there, son? What turned you into this? Cole looked up from his laptop, his eyes reflecting something Frank had never seen before. Not anger, not hatred, but complete emotional absence. I learned that mercy is a luxury soldiers can't afford. I learned that enemies only understand strength. And I learned that some betrayals are so complete that forgiveness becomes complicity. Cole saved the letters and closed the laptop. Diana, Rick, and Tyler declared war on my life, my service, and my sacrifice. They thought they were fighting a wounded veteran who would accept defeat gracefully. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful farmland that had become his fortress. They were wrong. They were fighting a professional soldier who never lost a mission. And I don't intend to start now. Frank felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. The young man he'd mentored decades ago was gone, replaced by something colder and more calculating than Frank had ever imagined possible. Cole Morrison had won his war against the people who betrayed him. But victory, Frank realized, had cost him his humanity. Chapter 9. The Final Victory. 5 years later, Cole Morrison stood in the kitchen of his new home in Montana, reading a letter that had been forwarded through 3 different addresses. The return address showed it was from Tyler, now 28 and recently released from federal prison. Dad, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I had to try. I've spent 5 years thinking about what I did, about what we did to you. You were right about everything. Mom and Rick used me, manipulated me, turned me against the one person who never deserved my betrayal. I have a daughter now. Her name is Emma, and she's 4 years old. Madison and I aren't together anymore. The stress of everything broke us apart. But Emma is innocent in all this, and she doesn't have a grandfather. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know what I did was unforgivable. I'm not asking for money or help or anything except the chance to apologize face to face. I want you to know that I understand now what honor means, what sacrifice means, what I threw away when I chose money over family. If you'll let me, I'd like to bring Emma to meet you. Not because I deserve anything, but because she deserves to know that she comes from a line of heroes, even if her father failed to live up to that legacy. I'm sorry, Dad, for everything. Tyler. Cole read the letter twice, then walked to his fireplace and burned it. He felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, no temptation toward reconciliation. The man who had written that letter was a stranger who happened to share his DNA. His phone rang. Frank Whitmore, now in his 70s, called every few months to check on Cole. How are you doing, son? I'm well. Peaceful. That's good to hear. Any interesting mail today? Cole smiled slightly. Frank knew him too well. Tyler wrote. He wants to reconcile. Wants me to meet his daughter. There was a long pause. What are you going to do? Nothing. Tyler made his choice 5 years ago. He called me a burden and told me to get out of our house. I got out. I'm not going back. Cole, the boy was young. People change. Maybe. Frank. Cole interrupted gently. Tyler is 28 years old. When I was 28, I was leading men in combat, making life-and-death decisions, sacrificing for others. Age isn't an excuse for betrayal. Frank sighed. What about the granddaughter? Emma? She's innocent. Emma has a father who chose to make her the child of a convicted felon. That's Tyler's responsibility, not mine. Cole walked to his study, where he kept his medals, commendations, and photos from his military service. On the desk was a single picture. Frank and Cole on the day Cole shipped out for his first deployment, both of them young and optimistic about the future. I built a good life here, Frank. I do consulting work for the VA, helping other veterans navigate the system. I volunteer at the local hospital. I have peace. Do you have happiness? Cole considered the question. I have satisfaction. I eliminated the threats to my well-being. I neutralized the enemies who betrayed me. I completed my mission. That's not the same thing as happiness. No, Cole agreed. But it's enough. After hanging up with Frank, Cole went to his computer and typed a brief response to Tyler's letter. Tyler, I received your letter. I am not interested in reconciliation, apology, or meeting your daughter. You made your choice 5 years ago when you participated in betraying me. I made my choice when I decided to eliminate you from my life. Do not contact me again. Do not attempt to visit. Do not send photos or updates about your life. You are no longer my son, and I am no longer your father. Live with the consequences of your choices. Cole Morrison. Cole mailed the letter and returned to his routine. Every morning, he exercised with his prosthetic, maintaining the physical conditioning that had kept him alive through multiple deployments. Every afternoon, he worked with veterans who were struggling with their own battles, not against foreign enemies, but against bureaucracy, disability, and the challenge of rebuilding civilian lives. Every evening, he sat on his porch overlooking the Montana wilderness, reading or simply watching the sun set over mountains that had never known betrayal. 3 months later, Cole received news that Diana had been released early for good behavior. She'd reportedly moved to Oregon to live with her sister, where she worked at a grocery store and attended court-ordered therapy sessions. She'd attempted to contact Cole once through his old attorney, asking only for an address where she could send a letter of apology. Cole instructed his attorney to inform Diana that any further contact attempts would result in a restraining order. Rick Lawson was released 8 months after Diana. Cole's sources, he maintained a network of former military colleagues who understood the importance of intelligence, reported that Rick had struggled to find employment due to his federal conviction. He was living in a halfway house in Detroit, working at a warehouse for minimum wage. Rick had apparently asked several mutual acquaintances about Cole's whereabouts, claiming he wanted to make things right. Cole sources made it clear to Rick that Cole preferred he remain ignorant of his former friend's existence. As Cole sat on his porch that evening, he reflected on the completeness of his victory. Diana, Rick, and Tyler had all paid the price for their betrayal. They'd lost their freedom, their money, their reputations, and their futures. More importantly, they'd lost any claim to his forgiveness, his concern, or his existence. A car pulled into his driveway. Frank Whitmore, making one of his quarterly visits. Frank climbed out slowly, his age showing in his movements. "Evening, son." "Evening, Frank." "Coffee." They sat on the porch as darkness fell over the mountains. Frank studied Cole's face in the lamplight. "You look content." "I am." "Any regrets?" Cole considered the question seriously. "I regret trusting people who proved unworthy of trust. I regret believing that family bonds were stronger than greed and selfishness. I regret sacrificing for people who saw my sacrifice as weakness." "What about Tyler's little girl? Any regrets about never meeting her?" Cole's expression didn't change. "Emma isn't my granddaughter. She's the daughter of a convicted felon who betrayed his father for money. Tyler chose her future when he chose to become a criminal." Frank nodded slowly. "You've become a hard man, Cole. I've become a wise man. Hard is what happens when you let people hurt you repeatedly. Wise is what happens when you learn from the experience and ensure it never happens again." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged. Finally, Frank spoke again. "Do you ever think about what you could have been if none of this had happened?" Cole smiled slightly. "I think about what I am because it did happen. I'm a man who understands the true value of loyalty. I'm a veteran who helps other veterans without expecting gratitude or recognition. I'm a person who lives according to his principles without compromise. You're also a man alone. I'm a man at peace." Frank finished his coffee and stood to leave. "I worry about you sometimes, Cole. Isolation can be its own kind of prison." Cole walked his old friend to the car. "Frank, for 25 years I lived surrounded by people who claimed to love me while planning to betray me. For 5 years, I've lived alone with people who actually respect me. I know which one feels like freedom." As Frank drove away, Cole returned to his porch. In the distance, he could hear the sounds of the wilderness, owls calling, wind through the trees, the peaceful symphony of a world where betrayal was simply part of the natural order rather than a personal violation. Cole Morrison had completed his final mission. He'd eliminated the enemies who declared war on his life, and he'd built a new existence free from their poison. He'd chosen justice over mercy, wisdom over sentiment, and peace over the false comfort of family ties. The boy who'd left for basic training decades ago, believing in loyalty and sacrifice, had returned as a man who understood that some betrayals are so complete they require complete separation. Cole Morrison was alone, but he was victorious. And for a soldier who'd never lost a mission, victory was enough. In the distance, a coyote howled, a wild, lonely sound that carried across the mountains like a battle cry. Cole smiled and raised his coffee cup in salute. To all the enemies defeated, all the missions completed, and all the traitors left behind in the ruins of their own making. The war was over. Cole had won. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. To our wonderful community at Infidelity Tales Lab, welcome and thank you. Your presence keeps us motivated. Quick question, what part of the globe are you tuning in from? Whether it's morning or night where you are, let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Perfect Illusion. Dominic Dumb, Archer had built everything with his own 2 hands. At 42, he transformed from a Special Forces operative to the owner of Sentinel Security, one of the most exclusive private security firms in Boston. His clients included tech billionaires, foreign dignitaries, and celebrities who needed the kind of protection only someone with Dom's particular skill set could provide. His home in Brookline was his fortress, a modernized Victorian with state-of-the-art security systems he'd designed himself. Inside those walls lived what he believed was his greatest accomplishment, his family. Vanessa, his wife of 10 years, had just given birth to their second child, a daughter they'd named Sophia. Their son, Leo, had just turned 8, a precocious kid with Dom's analytical mind and Vanessa's charm. "You sure you've got everything, buddy?" Dom asked, watching Leo pack his backpack for their trip to visit Vanessa and the baby at Massachusetts General. "Yep, I made Mom a card, and I got Sophia that bunny we picked out," Leo replied, carefully placing a small stuffed rabbit into his bag. Dom smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "She's a little young for stuffed animals, but I think she'll appreciate the gesture when she's older." The drive to the hospital was filled with Leo's excited chatter about becoming a big brother. Dom nodded along, hiding the fatigue from the sleepless nights he'd spent at the hospital while Vanessa recovered from a difficult C-section. "Dad, what's it like, having 2 kids now?" Leo asked. Dom glanced at his son in the rearview mirror. "It means I've got twice as much to protect, and twice as much to be proud of." As they walked through the hospital corridors, Dom's phone buzzed. A text from his operations manager about a client emergency. He'd have to deal with it later. Leo skipped ahead toward room 507, where Vanessa had been moved after delivery. Dom trailed behind, balancing a bouquet of lilies and a coffee. He was a few steps from the door when he noticed Leo had stopped abruptly, his small body frozen in the doorway. "Leo," Dom called, quickening his pace. Leo turned, his face pale. He stepped out of the doorway and closed the door gently behind him. "Dad, get under the bed. Now." Leo's voice was barely above a whisper, his eyes wide with urgency. "What? Leo, what are you?" Leo grabbed his father's hand, pulling him toward the adjoining empty room. "Please, Dad. Trust me." Something in his son's expression, fear mixed with determination, triggered Dom's dormant tactical instincts. He followed Leo into the empty room, where the boy immediately dropped to the floor and rolled onto the hospital bed. Dom set down the coffee and flowers and joined him, the cold linoleum pressing against his chest. "Leo, I need you to tell me what's going on," Dom whispered. Footsteps approached in the hallway. Leo's small hand shot out, covering his father's mouth. The footsteps paused, then entered Vanessa's room next door. "Hey, beautiful." A male voice that Dom didn't recognize drifted through the thin wall. "How are my girls today?" Dom's entire body tensed. He moved to get up, but Leo's grip on his arm tightened with surprising strength. "Not yet," Leo whispered, his eyes pleading. "We need to hear everything." Through the wall came Vanessa's laugh, a specific laugh Dom hadn't heard in years. It was her genuine laugh, not the polished one she used for her social media followers or at his company events. "She's sleeping. Come here, I've missed you." Vanessa's voice was sultry, intimate. "I hate sneaking around, V. It's been 8 months. When are you going to tell him?" "After I'm out of the hospital. I've got it all planned. By next week, he'll be out of the picture. I still don't like the plan, babe. It feels wrong." "You worry too much, Preston. Trust me, with what I have on him, he'll disappear quietly. No messy divorce, no custody battle. Just a clean break and a nice fat settlement to start our new life." "And Leo?" "We talked about this. I can't replace his dad. You already have. Leo adores you. He's barely spent time with Dom this year, with all his work trips." Dom felt a cold wave wash over him. He looked at his son, who was silently crying now, tears streaming down his cheeks. Leo wasn't surprised by any of this. He had known. "I'm going to grab coffee," the man Preston said. "Need anything?" "Just hurry back," Vanessa purred. The footsteps receded. Leo finally released his grip on Dom's arm. "I didn't know how to tell you," Leo whispered, his voice cracking. "She said you didn't love us anymore, that you were staying away on purpose." Dom's world was crumbling around him, but his son's tear-streaked face became his anchor. He'd deal with the rage later. Right now, his son needed him. "How long have you known?" Dom asked gently. "Since my birthday." He was at the party. Mom said he was just her photographer, but later, I saw them kissing in the garden when everyone was gone. "And the baby?" Leo shook his head. "I don't know. But yesterday, when you were at work, I heard Mom telling him that they'd be a real family soon. All 4 of them. All 4 of them." The implication hit Dom like a physical blow. Sophia might not be his daughter. Leo, listen to me, Dom said, his voice steady despite the hurricane inside him. What you did today was brave. You protected me when I didn't even know I needed protection. I will never forget that. Are you mad? Leo asked, wiping his tears. Not at you. Never at you, Dom promised. Now, we're going to leave quietly, and we're going to figure this out together. Okay. Leo nodded. Okay, Dad. As they slipped out of the hospital, Dom's mind was already calculating, planning. Vanessa thought she had something on him. She thought she could take his son and walk away with his money, his company, his legacy. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The man she'd married, the disciplined, controlled businessman, was just a facade. Beneath it waited the man he'd been trained to be, patient, ruthless, and absolutely unforgiving. The game had just begun, and Dominic Archer never played to lose. Chapter 2. Shadows and Whispers. Dom drove in silence, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Leo sat in the back seat, staring out the window, his earlier excitement replaced by a solemn quiet that no 8-year-old should know. We're not going home, are we? Leo finally asked as Dom turned onto the highway, heading north instead of east toward Brookline. Not right now, buddy. We're going to see Uncle Nolan. Nolan Riggs had been Dom's spotter in Afghanistan, the man who'd watch his back through 3 tours. Now he ran a remote lake house in New Hampshire that served as a safe house for Sentinel Security's most valuable clients. Dom had never expected to need it for himself. Is it because of Mom's plan? Leo asked. Dom glanced at his son in the rearview mirror. What do you know about her plan, Leo? Leo fidgeted with his seatbelt. Not much. Just that she says she has dirt on you. That's what she told Preston. That you did bad things overseas, and if you don't give her what she wants, she'll tell everyone. Dom's jaw clenched. His classified operations during his military service were buried deep, or so he thought. How Vanessa had accessed that information was a problem for later. Right now, he needed to understand the full scope of her betrayal. Leo, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has your mother ever had you record our conversations? Or has she ever had you look through my office? Leo looked down, guilt written across his face. Last month, she gave me your office key. Said she needed papers for the baby's health insurance. I didn't know it was wrong. It's not your fault, Dom assured him, though his mind was racing. His home office contained old encrypted drives with mission logs. Nothing that would implicate him in anything illegal, but enough classified material that its unauthorized possession would violate his security clearances and potentially destroy Sentinel Security's government contracts. The drive to New Hampshire took 3 hours. By the time they pulled up to the lakeside cabin, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the water. The cabin looked rustic from the outside, but Dom knew it housed a comprehensive security system and a communications setup that rivaled military command centers. Nolan emerged from the cabin, tall and wiry with a salt and pepper beard. His face broke into a smile when he saw Leo, but his eyes were questioning when they met Dom's. The Eagle has landed, Dom said, using their old code for an unexpected threat. Nolan's expression hardened. Without missing a beat, he turned to Leo. Hey, champ, I got a new game system inside with all the latest titles. Why don't you check it out while your dad and I catch up? Once Leo was settled inside with headphones on, Dom and Nolan sat on the cabin's deck, the security perimeter already activated. Start from the beginning, Nolan said, sliding a glass of bourbon across the table. Dom recounted everything. The hospital scene, the conversation they overheard, and what Leo had revealed during the drive. Jesus Christ, Nolan muttered. The baby might not be yours. I won't know until I get a DNA test. But that's not my priority right now. Vanessa mentioned having something on me, something about my military service. I need to know what she has and who else knows. Nolan nodded, his expression grim. Preston, you mentioned that name. Got a last name? No, but Vanessa called him her photographer. Shouldn't be hard to find. Preston Davenport, Nolan said, already scrolling through his phone. I vetted all your household contacts, remember? Vanessa hired him 8 months ago to manage her social media presence. Former fashion photographer, divorced twice. No criminal record, but has a history of financial problems. Dom took a long sip of bourbon, letting the burn in his throat focus his thoughts. I need surveillance on both of them. I need to know who they're talking to, what they're planning. And I need it yesterday. Already on it, Nolan replied, typing rapidly. I've got Wilson and Cruz available. Top-notch surveillance, completely off the books. Good. And I need a full digital extraction from all of Vanessa's devices. If she's accessing my classified files, I need to know how deep it goes. That's trickier with her in the hospital, but I know a nurse at Mass General who owes me a favor. We can get to her phone, at least. Dom stared out at the darkening lake, his reflection in the glass door catching his attention. The man looking back at him wasn't the polished security consultant who'd left for the hospital that morning. This was the face he'd almost forgotten, the calculating operative who'd hunted high-value targets across 3 continents. There's something else, Dom said quietly. Leo thinks Vanessa has been grooming him to turn against me, feeding him lies, using him to gather intelligence. Nolan's expression darkened. That crosses a line. Every line has been crossed, Dom replied, his voice cold. Now it's my turn. Inside, Leo had fallen asleep on the couch, the game controller still in his hands. Dom covered him with a blanket, studying his son's face. Leo had Vanessa's delicate features, but the determination in his jaw, that was all Dom. His phone vibrated with a text. The hospital, informing him that Vanessa was asking for him. She must have realized by now that he wasn't coming back. He typed a response. Sorry, emergency with a client. We'll be there first thing tomorrow. The lie came easily. Vanessa had taught him that much, at least. What's the play, Dom? Nolan asked from the doorway. Dom looked up, his decision already made. We gather intelligence. We identify all players. And then we dismantle her plan piece by piece. No rush, no mistakes. And when it's done, Dom's eyes hardened. When it's done, she'll realize that threatening a man like me was the worst mistake of her life. As Nolan left to make calls, Dom sat beside his sleeping son, his mind mapping out the weeks ahead. Vanessa thought she knew him. She thought she could manipulate and discard him. She had no idea what was coming. Chapter 3, Tangled Webs. The next 3 days at Nolan's cabin became Dom's war room. While Leo explored the lakeside property during the day, fishing with Nolan, hiking the surrounding trails, Dom constructed an intricate map of Vanessa's betrayal using the intelligence flowing in from his team. Preston Davenport was 34, a freelance photographer who'd built a reputation shooting for mid-tier fashion magazines before transitioning to the more lucrative world of social media influencers. He'd met Vanessa at a charity gala where she'd been a featured speaker. Within weeks, he was handling all her professional photography. Within 2 months, based on the hotel records Nolan's team had uncovered, they were sleeping together. Financial records show he was nearly bankrupt before hooking up with your wife, Cruz reported via secure video link. Since then, his accounts have seen regular cash deposits, usually 5 to 10 grand a time. Source: Dom asked. Working on it, but I bet my left arm it's coming from your accounts. Vanessa's personal spending has increased by roughly the same amount over the past 6 months. Dom nodded, adding this to his mental calculation. The money didn't matter. What mattered was understanding the full picture. What about Vanessa's digital footprint? He asked. Wilson, the team's cyber specialist, took over the briefing. She's been busy. 3 separate email accounts, one using end-to-end encryption. Heavy communication with a law firm specializing in high-net-worth divorces. And this is where it gets interesting. Emails to a former analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency. Dom's blood ran cold. Name: Maxwell Bryce. Discharged under less than honorable circumstances 2 years ago. Been freelancing since then, mostly corporate espionage stuff. The pieces were falling into place. Bryce would have had access to classified files, possibly including redacted mission reports from Dom's time in Special Forces. Any direct connection between Bryce and Vanessa? Wilson nodded. Hotel meeting 3 months ago in New York. She told you she was at a wellness retreat, according to your calendar. What about the baby? Dom asked, the question he'd been avoiding. Cruz's expression softened slightly. Hospital records show she requested amniocentesis during the pregnancy. DNA testing was performed, results delivered directly to her. The record doesn't show paternity. Dom absorbed this without visible reaction. And her current status? Discharged from the hospital yesterday. She's at your house with the baby in Preston. She's been calling you nonstop, but as instructed, we've rerouted your calls to appear as if you're in Dubai handling a client emergency. Dom turned to the window, watching Leo skipping stones across the lake with Nolan. His son had been quiet but resilient, asking few questions but observing everything. Dom had explained that they needed to stay away from home for a while, and Leo had simply nodded and asked if they could get his favorite books from the cabin's small library. Have we identified any other players? Dom asked, turning back to the screens. One more of interest, Wilson replied. Vanessa's sister, Laurel Montgomery. Previously estranged, but they've reconnected intensely over the past year. Laurel's husband is a senior partner at Blackstone & Gray, the law firm that handled my business contracts, Dom noted, another piece clicking into place. Laurel's husband would have had access to Sentinel Securities' financial structure, client lists, and valuation. Exactly. And Laurel has been staying at your guest house for the past week, allegedly to help with the new baby. Dom's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He glanced down at the message. I know what you're doing. We need to talk. For Leo's sake. Preston. It had to be. We got contact, Dom announced, showing the message to his team. Preston's reaching out independently. Could be a trap, Nolan warned, having just entered the room. Vanessa could be using him to locate you. Or he's getting cold feet, Dom countered. Either way, it's an opportunity. The decision crystallized in his mind. It was time to begin the first phase of his response. Set up a meeting, Dom instructed. Public place, surveillance in position. Let's see what Preston has to say when he's not hiding behind my wife. For hours later, Dom sat in a booth at a roadside diner just south of the New Hampshire border. The location had been chosen carefully, public enough to be safe, remote enough to avoid recognition. Cruz was positioned at the counter, posing as a long-haul trucker. Wilson monitored the scene from a van in the parking lot. Preston arrived 10 minutes late, his expensive leather jacket and designer stubble looking out of place among the diner's working-class clientele. He slid into the booth across from Dom, his eyes darting nervously around the restaurant. I wasn't sure you'd come, Preston said, his voice holding a slight tremor. Dom studied him silently, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the way his hands couldn't quite keep still. This wasn't a man enjoying his triumph. This was a man who'd realized he was out of his depth. Let's be clear about something, Dom finally said, his voice coldly pleasant. The only reason you're sitting across from me, instead of waking up in an unmarked room, is because my son cares about what happens to his mother. So speak carefully and speak quickly. Preston swallowed hard. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I didn't know about Bryce, about the files. That was all Vanessa's idea. What files exactly? Operational reports. Something about a mission in Kandahar that went wrong. Civilian casualties that were covered up. She said it was enough to destroy you professionally if it got out. Dom's expression remained neutral, but internally, he felt a surge of cold rage. Operation Blackstone had been a hostage extraction that went sideways when faulty intelligence led them into a civilian area. The casualties had been tragic but unavoidable, and no cover-up had occurred. The mission reports had been classified to protect sources, not to hide wrongdoing. And the baby? Dom asked. Preston looked down. I don't know. She never told me, for certain. But the timing works both ways, Dom finished for him. Why are you here, Preston? What do you want? I want out, Preston admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. This isn't who I am. I take pictures, I don't destroy families. But Vanessa, she's changed. Whatever she's planning now, it's bigger than just leaving you. She talks about taking everything, your company, your reputation, your freedom. Dom leaned forward slightly. And you think warning me makes up for sleeping with my wife and helping her plot against me? Preston shook his head. No, nothing makes up for that. But Leo deserves better than to be used as a pawn in whatever game Vanessa's playing. And that baby, no matter who the father is, deserves better too. For a moment, Dom saw something genuine in Preston's eyes. Fear, yes, but also remorse. It changed nothing about what Dom intended to do, but it provided useful information. Preston was weak. He could be leveraged. If you want to help Leo, then here's what you're going to do, Dom said, sliding a small device across the table. This goes in Vanessa's home office, behind a third book on the top shelf. Her sister Laurel will be visiting her there tomorrow afternoon, according to their text messages. I want to hear everything they say. Preston stared at the device, then back at Dom. And then what? Then we'll talk again about how you can start making amends. For now, go back and pretend this meeting never happened. Can you do that? Preston nodded, pocketing the device with shaking hands. She underestimates you, he said quietly. She thinks because you've been playing the respectable businessman for so long, you've forgotten who you really are. Dom allowed himself a small, cold smile. Everyone makes mistakes, Preston. Hers was forgetting that the man she married was never just a businessman. As Preston left the diner, Dom remained seated, stirring his untouched coffee. Phase 1 was in motion. Divide and conquer, the oldest strategy in warfare. Turn Vanessa's conspirators against each other, gather intelligence, and prepare for the moment when all the pieces were in position. Later that night, as Dom tucked Leo in a bed at the cabin, his son looked up at him with those perceptive eyes that seemed to see everything. Are we going to be okay, Dad? Leo asked. Dom sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. Yes, we are, but things are going to change. Mom has made some choices that mean we can't be a family the way we were before. Because of Preston? Partly, but also because she's not being honest, and families need honesty to work properly. Leo was quiet for a moment, processing this. Is the baby still my sister, even if she's not your baby? The question hit Dom like a physical blow, but he kept his expression gentle. Yes, Leo. Sophia will always be your sister, no matter what. And you'll always be my son. Nothing and no one will ever change that. Leo nodded, seemingly satisfied. Mom said you'd abandon us. But you wouldn't do that, would you? Not even if you were really angry. Never, Dom promised, the word carrying the weight of an oath. I will never abandon you, Leo. That's a promise, and I don't break my promises. As Leo drifted off to sleep, Dom stood by the window, watching the moonlight on the lake. His son's trust was a responsibility that outweighed everything else. It would guide his actions in the days ahead, not to soften his response to Vanessa's betrayal, but to ensure that when the dust settled, Leo would understand that his father had acted with justice, not mere vengeance. The listening device Preston had planted would activate tomorrow. By nightfall, Dom would know exactly what Vanessa and her sister were planning. And then, the real work would begin. Chapter 4. The Architect's Blueprint. They're calling it Operation Phoenix, Wilson reported, pushing a transcript across the cabin's dining table, now covered with laptops and surveillance equipment. Vanessa and her sister spent 2 hours yesterday outlining the whole thing. Dom scanned the transcript, his expression darkening with each page. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. Allegations of military misconduct would force the Pentagon to open an investigation into Dom's past operations, freezing government contracts with Sentinel Security. Meanwhile, rumored connections to foreign assets would trigger a security clearance review, effectively crippling Dom's ability to operate while the investigation was ongoing. With Sentinel Security in free fall, Vanessa would file for divorce, claiming emotional distress and endangerment, leveraging the security investigation to portray Dom as unstable and dangerous. The custody battle would be rigged from the start, with Laurel's husband's law firm providing falsified psychological assessments, suggesting Dom's military background made him an unfit parent. They've been setting this up for over a year, Nolan observed, reading over Dom's shoulder. The planning, the positioning, bringing in Bryce to access classified material. This isn't just an affair that got out of hand. No, Dom agreed, his voice devoid of emotion. This is methodical. And Vanessa isn't the architect. Laurel is. The transcript revealed Laurel as the mastermind, guiding her sister through each phase of the plan. It was Laurel who had connected Vanessa with Bryce. Laurel who had coached her on which accounts to drain and which assets to leverage. The question is why, Cruz said. What does Laurel get out of destroying you? Dom turned to the last page, where Vanessa had asked her sister that very question. Laurel's answer was illuminating. Quinn Montgomery will never forget what his precious Sentinel team did to my husband's career. Taking you and the kids away from him is just the beginning. By the time we're done, Sentinel security will be sold for parts, and Montgomery will have nothing but his memories. Quinn Montgomery, Dom stated flatly, my former commanding officer and Sentinel's silent partner. The connection? Nolan asked. 5 years ago, Blackstone and Gray represented a hedge fund trying to acquire Montgomery's previous company. Quinn blocked the deal, and Thomas Montgomery, Laurel's husband, was pushed out of his firm shortly after. The acquisition would have netted him millions in partner bonuses. Dom stood, moving to the map of connections they'd created on the cabin's wall. He added a new name at the top, Thomas Montgomery. This was never about Vanessa and Preston, Dom realized. They're just pawns. This is about Thomas using his wife's sister to get to Quinn through me. Collateral damage, Cruz muttered. No, Dom corrected, his eyes cold. There's no such thing as collateral damage in this scenario. Everyone who participated made their choice. Now, they'll face the consequences. He turned to his team, the strategy already forming in his mind. We need to accelerate the timeline. Vanessa, expect me back from my business trip tomorrow. She'll want to begin the next phase immediately. What's our play? Wilson asked. We beat them at their own game, Dom replied. They want to use classified information against me? Who can play that manipulation game? Nolan, contact General Mercer at the Pentagon. It's time to call in that favor from Islamabad. Nolan nodded, already reaching for his secure phone. Cruz, I need a complete breakdown of Thomas Montgomery's client list for the past decade. Look for patterns, conflicts of interest, anything we can leverage. On it, Cruz confirmed. Wilson, hack Bryce's systems. I want every file he accessed, every communication regarding Operation Phoenix. Dom paused, looking at the silent baby monitor on the table. Leo was napping upstairs, exhausted from a morning spent helping Nolan repair the cabin's dock. There's one more component, Dom continued, his voice softer. I need absolute confirmation about Sophia's paternity. Not for leverage, I won't use a child that way, but because I need to know every variable in play. Later that afternoon, Dom sat with Leo on the cabin's porch swing, watching a thunderstorm roll across the lake. The boy had been asking more questions lately, trying to piece together why they weren't going home, why his mother wasn't calling him directly. Dad, are you and Mom getting a divorce? Leo finally asked, the question that had clearly been weighing on him. Dom didn't sugarcoat it. Yes, Leo, your mother and I won't be married anymore. Leo absorbed this, then asked, is it because of what we heard at the hospital? Partly, but sometimes people change and want different things. Your mother has made choices that mean we can't be together anymore. Will I still see her? Dom hesitated, knowing that the coming weeks would determine the answer to that question. That's something we'll have to figure out. But no matter what happens, I'll make sure you're safe and happy. Leo leaned against his father's side. I'm glad I told you. About Preston. Mom said it was our secret, but it felt wrong. Dom put his arm around his son. You did the right thing, Leo. Always remember that the truth might be difficult, but it's always braver than hiding behind lies. By evening, the pieces of Dom's counterstrike were falling into place. General Mercer had agreed to issue a statement confirming that all operations conducted by Dom's unit had been fully investigated and cleared, effectively neutralizing Bryce's stolen files before they could be weaponized. Cruz had uncovered 3 instances where Thomas Montgomery had represented both sides of an acquisition through shell companies, a clear ethical violation that could cost him his law license if exposed. And Wilson had not only recovered all the files Bryce had accessed, but had also planted a digital trail suggesting Bryce was selling classified information to corporate competitors, a trail that would lead federal investigators to his door within days. What about Vanessa? Nolan asked as they reviewed the plan. Where does she land in all this? Dom was silent for a moment. She made her choice, he finally said. She chose to use our son as a pawn. She chose to threaten my freedom and reputation. She chose to align herself with people willing to destroy lives for revenge and profit. So she goes down with them, Nolan concluded. She faces the consequences of her actions, Dom corrected, just like everyone else involved. The DNA results for Sophia came in just before midnight. Dom opened the email alone, steeling himself for confirmation of what he already suspected. The clinical language was unambiguous. Based on genetic markers, there was a 0% probability that Dominic Archer was the biological father of Sophia Montgomery. Dom closed the laptop, feeling a strange sense of clarity. The last uncertainty had been removed. Now he could proceed without reservation. Tomorrow, he would return home as if nothing had changed. He would embrace Vanessa, smile at her lies, and begin the intricate dance that would ultimately dismantle her world piece by piece. But first, he had one more call to make. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Beckett Security Solutions, a woman's voice answered. "I need to speak with Adelaide Beckett," Dom said. "Tell her it's Dominic Archer, and I'm calling him my marker from Dubai." Adelaide Beckett had been Dom's first client when he started Sentinel Security. More importantly, she was Thomas Montgomery's ex-wife, and she had been waiting years for an opportunity to settle scores with a man who had left her for a younger woman after 20 years of marriage. As Dom outlined what he needed, Adelaide's laughter came through the phone. "Oh, Dominic," she said, "I've been waiting for this call. Consider it done." Dom ended the call and went to check on Leo, who was sleeping peacefully. Tomorrow would change everything, but tonight he would watch over his son and prepare for the battle ahead. The board was set. The pieces were in motion. And Dominic Archer was about to remind everyone why crossing him was a mistake no one made twice. Chapter 5. Smoke and Mirrors. Dom's return to the Brookline house was a masterclass in deception. He arrived bearing gifts: a cashmere wrap for Vanessa, an ornate silver rattle for Sophia, and a stack of exotic sweets allegedly from Dubai. His smile was warm, his embrace seemingly genuine as he kissed Vanessa on the cheek. "I've missed you," he told her, watching her eyes carefully for any flicker of discomfort. There was none. Her performance was flawless. "We've missed you too," she replied, adjusting the baby in her arms. "Haven't we, Sophia? Daddy's finally home." The word daddy should have stung, knowing what he now knew, but Dom had moved beyond such reactions. Each lie was now simply evidence, each false smile a confirmation of his course. Leo hung back, his small face solemn until Dom scooped him up in a big hug. "There's my boy," Dom said, his affection genuinely breaking through his control facade. "Did you hold down the fort while I was gone?" Leo nodded, glancing nervously between his parents. Dom had coached him carefully before their return. "Act normal. Say nothing about their time at the cabin," followed Dad's lead. The boy was performing admirably, though the strain was visible in his tense shoulders. Preston came by yesterday to take some photos of Sophia for the birth announcement. Vanessa mentioned casually as they moved into the living room. "I hope you don't mind. I know we talked about waiting, but everyone's been asking." "Not at all," Dom replied smoothly. "We should showcase our beautiful family." Vanessa's slight hesitation was nearly imperceptible, but to Dom, who was watching for any reaction, it spoke volumes. She hadn't expected him to be so accommodating. "How was Dubai?" she asked, changing the subject. "The Al Hamrani contract must be huge if it needed your personal attention." Dom launched into a detailed account of a negotiation that had never happened, with people who didn't exist, painting a picture of a massive security contract that would transform Sentinel's market position. Each fabricated detail was designed to feed Vanessa's expectations that Dom was focused on business, oblivious to her machinations. "You seem different," Vanessa observed later that evening as they prepared for bed. "More relaxed." Dom gave her a tired smile. "Maybe I am. Being away gave me perspective. Family is what matters, Vanessa. The company, the contracts, they're just means to an end." A flash of concern crossed her face. This wasn't the workaholic she'd planned to portray in divorce court. This was a devoted family man who prioritized his wife and children. "That's wonderful," she managed, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I'm thinking of scaling back my involvement in day-to-day operations," Dom continued, watching her reaction carefully. "Quinn's been suggesting it for years. Maybe it's time to listen." The mention of Quinn Montgomery caused a nearly imperceptible tightening around Vanessa's mouth. "Whatever makes you happy, darling." As Vanessa slept beside him that night, Dom lay awake, reviewing the day's progress. Phase 1 of his counter-operation was underway. Create uncertainty, disrupt expectations, and monitor the ripple effects. The next morning, those ripple effects became apparent. Vanessa made 3 calls from the garden, speaking in hushed tones that the directional microphone's crews had installed easily captured. The first was to Preston, expressing concern about Dom's changed demeanor. The second was to Laurel, who insisted they accelerate their timeline. The third was to Bryce, instructing him to prepare the classified files for release. By noon, Dom's countermeasures began activating in sequence. First, General Mercer issued his public statement, affirming that all operations conducted under his command have been thoroughly reviewed and found compliant with military protocols. The press release specifically mentioned Operation Blackstone, noting that while tragic, the civilian casualties had resulted from intelligence failures outside the operational team's control. Within an hour, Vanessa received a panic call for Bryce. "The files are worthless now," he hissed, unaware of the surveillance. "Mercer's statement undercuts everything we had. And worse, someone's been in my system. There's evidence I never created, suggesting I've been selling classified information. I'm being set up." "That's not possible," Vanessa insisted. "No one knows what we're doing. Tell that to the federal agents who just contacted my attorney." "I'm going dark, Vanessa. You're on your own." The second domino fell mid-afternoon when Adelaide Beckett's machinations bore fruit. Thomas Montgomery received a call from his firm's ethics committee, requesting his immediate presence regarding serious allegations of professional misconduct. The notification was copied to the State Bar Association. By evening, Laurel was frantically calling Vanessa, their carefully constructed plan unraveling strand by strand. "It's all connected," Laurel ranted, her voice shrill with panic. "Someone knows, Vanessa. Someone's systematically dismantling our entire operation." Dom listened to the recording later that night in his home office, a glass of bourbon in hand, a satisfied smile playing at his lips. The chaos he'd orchestrated was proceeding exactly as planned. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Leo stood in the doorway, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. "Can't sleep, buddy?" Dom asked, quickly shutting down the surveillance feed. Leo shook his head. "Mom's crying in her room. I heard her on the phone, saying everything's falling apart." Dom patted the leather sofa beside him, and Leo climbed up, leaning against his father's side. "Things are going to be confusing for a while," Dom explained gently. "Remember what I told you at the cabin? About how sometimes people make choices that have consequences. And now Mom's facing consequences?" Leo asked, his young mind grasping concepts well beyond his years. Dom nodded. "Yes. And so are the people who helped her make those choices. Are you making the consequences happen, Dad?" The directness of the question gave Dom pause. He considered deflecting, offering his son a comforting lie, but he'd promised Leo honesty. "Yes, Leo, I am. When someone tries to hurt you or the people you love, you have a right to defend yourself. What I'm doing is making sure that no one can hurt us again." Leo was quiet for a moment, processing this. "Is it like in my video games? The bad guys get defeated, and then the game is over." Dom stroked his son's hair. "Real life is more complicated than games, Leo. But in a way, yes. The people who try to hurt us won't be able to try again." "Good," Leo said firmly. "I don't like secrets and lies." "Neither do I, buddy. Neither do I." The next phase of Dom's plan activated at precisely 9 a.m. the following morning. As Vanessa was feeding Sophia in the nursery, her phone buzzed with an incoming email. Dom, monitoring her reaction through a hidden camera, watched her face drain of color as she opened the attachment. The email contained complete transcripts of her conversations with Preston, Laurel, and Bryce. Conversations detailing every aspect of Operation Phoenix. It was accompanied by a single line of text. "The game is over, Vanessa. Time to discuss terms." She was on her feet immediately, storming through the house in search of Dom. She found him in the kitchen, calmly making coffee as if it were any ordinary day. "What have you done?" she demanded, her voice shaking with rage and fear. Dom turned, his expression mild. I've simply leveled the playing field. Coffee. Stop it, she snapped. Those transcripts. How did you get them? Have you been spying on me? Just as you've been spying on me, Dom replied, his calm unnerving her further. The difference is, I'm better at it. You can't prove anything, she tried, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her certainty. Can I? Dom placed his coffee mug down and leaned against the counter. Maxwell Bryce is being investigated for selling classified information. Thomas Montgomery is facing disbarment for ethical violations. Preston's financial records show he's been receiving regular payments from our joint account, payments you authorized without my knowledge. And then there's the matter of Sophia's paternity. Vanessa's face went completely white. Ow! DNA doesn't lie, Vanessa. Unlike you. She sank into a kitchen chair, the magnitude of her defeat washing over her. What do you want? Terms of surrender, Dom stated simply. You will sign the divorce papers my attorney is preparing. You will relinquish all claims to Sentinel security and any associated assets. You will move out of this house by the end of the week. And Leo, she whispered, you will have supervised visitation to be reviewed after 1 year. Whether that visitation expands or ends entirely will depend on your behavior moving forward. You can't take my son, she protested, a hint of her former confidence returning. I already have, Dom replied, his voice hardening. The moment you used him as a tool in your scheme, you forfeited your right to call yourself his mother. The only reason you're getting visitation at all is because Leo still cares about you, though God knows you don't deserve it. And Sophia? Vanessa asked, tears now streaming down her face. Preston is her father. I assume you'll make appropriate arrangements with him. Vanessa looked up, suddenly suspicious. Preston, what did you do to him? Dom smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. Nothing he didn't deserve. You'll find he's had a change of heart about many things, including his willingness to testify against you if these matters ever reach a courtroom. The final piece of Dom's strategy had been the simplest, financial leverage. Preston, always motivated by money and status, had folded immediately when presented with evidence of his complicity in fraud, coupled with an offer of immunity and a generous consultation fee if he cooperated fully with Dom's plan. This isn't over, Vanessa said, but her voice lacked conviction. It was over the moment Leo heard you and Preston at the hospital, Dom replied. You just didn't know it yet. As Vanessa stormed out of the kitchen, Dom returned to his coffee, satisfaction warming him more than the hot liquid. Phase 2 was complete. The enemy was routed, their resources scattered, their alliance broken. Phase 3 would begin tomorrow, rebuilding what mattered, discarding what didn't, and ensuring that those who had betrayed him understood the full measure of their mistake. In war, victory was measured by territory gained or enemies killed. In Dom's world, victory would be measured by the security of his son, the preservation of his legacy, and the complete dismantling of those who had dared to threaten what was his. By those metrics, victory was already his. What remained was simply ensuring that the lesson would never be forgotten. Chapter 6. Controlled Demolition. The next 48 hours unfolded like a military operation. Dom had prepared contingencies for every possible reaction from Vanessa and her co-conspirators. What he hadn't anticipated was the speed of their capitulation. Thomas Montgomery was the first to fall. Faced with irrefutable evidence of ethical violations that Adelaide Beckett had meticulously documented during their marriage, he resigned for his law firm before the ethics committee could officially convene. By noon, he had boarded a private flight to an undisclosed location, leaving Laurel to face the wreckage alone. Laurel broke next, calling Vanessa in tears from the back seat of an Uber, her belongings hastily packed in suitcases beside her. Thomas is gone, she sobbed, unaware that her call was being monitored. He cleaned out our accounts and left me with nothing. So I was on my own. Vanessa, what do we do now? Vanessa's response was coldly pragmatic. We stick to the plan. Dom may have outmaneuvered us for now, but we still have leverage. Leo adores Preston, and we can use that in court. Dom, listening from his study, smiled grimly. Vanessa still didn't understand that the game was over, that every move she might make had already been anticipated and countered. Preston was the next piece to be removed from the board. He arrived at the Brookline house that evening, ostensibly to check on Vanessa after her confrontation with Dom. In reality, he was there to execute the final part of his agreement with Dom. The conversation, captured by the house's surveillance system, was brief and devastating. "I can't do this anymore," Preston told Vanessa, his voice cracking with what sounded like genuine remorse. "Dom knows everything. He has recordings, financial records, everything." "So what?" Vanessa hissed. "We knew he'd fight back. We just need to stick together and—" "I'm cooperating with him," Preston interrupted. "I've signed an affidavit detailing the entire plan. In exchange, he's dropping any potential charges against me." Vanessa's face transformed with fury. "You spineless bastard. After everything we've been through, you're betraying me for a deal?" Preston looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "It's not just that. What we did, using Leo, planning to destroy Dom's life, all of it, it was wrong, Vanessa. I got carried away with the fantasy of us being together. But the reality is we built this relationship on destruction. That's not a foundation for anything real." "Get out," Vanessa whispered, her voice deadly calm. "Get out, and don't ever come back." "Sophia is my daughter," Preston protested. "I have rights." "Rights?" Vanessa laughed bitterly. "You think Dom will let you near her after what we tried to do to him? You'll be lucky if he doesn't destroy you professionally, deal or no deal." From his vantage point in the study, Dom watched Preston's expression shift from guilt to fear. The photographer hadn't considered that Dom might renege on their agreement once he had what he needed. It was a leverage point Dom had deliberately left in play, the uncertainty keeping Preston compliant. After Preston left, Vanessa moved like a woman possessed, packing essential items, making frantic calls that went unanswered, and finally collapsing on her bed in defeated exhaustion. The baby monitor captured her whispered conversations with Sophia, promises that "Mommy will fix this," alternating with bitter recriminations against everyone who had abandoned her. Dom allowed her this night of desperation. By morning, the divorce papers would arrive, and with them, the full weight of her new reality. At breakfast, Leo watched his mother warily from across the table, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Dom had kept him insulated from the worst of the confrontations, but children always absorbed more than adults realized. "Why is everyone so quiet?" Leo finally asked, looking between his parents. Vanessa attempted a smile that came out as a grimace. "Mom and Dad have some things to work out, that's all." "Is it about the divorce?" Leo asked bluntly. Vanessa's head snapped up, her eyes accusing as they landed on Dom. "You told him?" "I told him the truth," Dom replied calmly. "Something you might try sometime." Before Vanessa could respond, the doorbell rang. Dom rose to answer it, returning moments later with a professional-looking woman carrying a leather portfolio. "Mrs. Archer, I'm Catherine Palmer from Blackwell Associates," the woman introduced herself. "I have some documents for you to review and sign." Dom turned to Leo. "Buddy, why don't you go finish getting ready for school? I'll be up in a few minutes to help with your science project." Once Leo had left, Catherine laid out the divorce papers on the dining table. The terms were exactly as Dom had outlined. Complete separation of assets, with Vanessa receiving only what she had brought into the marriage, supervised visitation with Leo, and a confidentiality agreement that would prevent her from discussing any aspect of their marriage or divorce publicly. "This is robbery," Vanessa seethed, flipping through the pages. "I've given 10 years of my life to this marriage. I built Dominic's image, hosted his clients, supported his career. I deserve half of everything. You plotted to destroy him using classified information that could have landed him in federal prison," Catherine replied coolly. "You conspired with others to damage his company, his reputation, and his relationship with his son. You committed financial fraud by diverting marital assets to your lover. Under the circumstances, Mrs. Archer, these terms are more than generous. And if I refuse to sign?" Catherine opened another section of her portfolio. "Then we proceed to court with these materials. Complete documentation of Operation Phoenix, including testimony from Preston Davenport and digital evidence recovered from Maxwell Bryce's servers. I should mention that Mr. Bryce was taken into custody this morning by federal agents." The color drained from Vanessa's face. You're bluffing. Bryce would never talk. He already has, Dom said quietly. Facing espionage charges, he's offering information on everyone involved in exchange for leniency. Your name featured prominently in his initial statement. Vanessa stared at the papers, the magnitude of her defeat finally sinking in. With trembling hands, she reached for a pen. I want to see Leo, she said after signing. Whenever I want, not just during supervised visits. That's not how this works, Dom replied. You used our son as a pawn in your scheme. You lied to him about me, tried to turn him against me. Those actions have consequences. He's my son, too. Biology isn't the only measure of parenthood, Vanessa. Trust is. Love is. Putting your child's needs above your own is. Dom's voice remained steady, but his eyes were cold. You failed on all counts. As Catherine gathered the signed papers, Dom delivered his final terms. You have until Friday to remove your personal belongings from the house. A security team will escort you to ensure nothing beyond the approved list leaves the premises. After that, any communication regarding Leo will go through my attorneys. And Sophia? Vanessa asked, her voice breaking slightly. That's between you and Preston. As legally established, she's not my child. Vanessa looked up, a flicker of her old defiance returning. You won't get away with this, Dominic. People like you don't just win. Dom leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. But I already have won, Vanessa. Every calculation you made was flawed. Every ally you recruited has abandoned you. Every weapon you thought you had has been neutralized. That's not luck. That's what happens when you target someone who knows how to dismantle threats incompletely. He straightened, his expression softening with something like pity. The mistake wasn't betraying me, Vanessa. It was forgetting who you were betraying. When Leo came downstairs, backpack in hand, ready for school, he found his father alone in the dining room. Where's Mom? He asked. She had to go take care of some things, Dom explained gently. She'll be moving to a new place soon. Leo absorbed this with the solemn understanding that had become characteristic of him lately. Because of the divorce? Yes, because of the divorce. Dom knelt to his son's level. Things are going to be different now, but some things will never change. I will always be here for you. That's a promise. Leo hugged his father tightly. I know, Dad. I trust you. Those 4 words, I trust you, resonated through Dom as he drove Leo to school. Everything he had done, every countermeasure and contingency, had been to protect that trust. Not just to win, but to ensure that his son would never again be used as a pawn in someone else's game. By the time Dom returned home, Vanessa had left, taking only her personal items and the baby. The house felt different, lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. In his study, Dom placed a call to Quinn Montgomery, his silent partner and former commanding officer. It's done, Dom reported. The threat has been neutralized. Casualties? Quinn asked, the military terminology coming naturally to both men. None that matter, Dom replied. Thomas Montgomery has fled the country. Bryce is in federal custody. Preston has been neutralized as a threat. Vanessa is isolated and contained. And Leo? Dom glanced at the framed photo on his desk. Leo at the lake house, proudly holding up a fish he'd caught with Nolan's help. He's resilient. He'll be fine. And you, Dom? How are you holding up? Dom considered the question. The rage that had driven him through the past 2 weeks had cooled into something harder, more permanent. Not satisfaction, exactly, but the knowledge that he had protected what mattered most. I'm recalibrating, he finally said, adjusting to the new normal. That's what you always did best, Quinn observed. Adapt and overcome. It's why you're my best operative and why you're my most valued partner now. After ending the call, Dom walked through the silent house, mentally cataloging the changes to come. Leo would need stability, reassurance. The company would require attention after the near miss with their government contracts. And Dom himself would need to find a new balance. The calculated ruthlessness that had served him in the past 2 weeks had to be carefully recontained, channeled into productive outlets. As he stood in the nursery, now empty of Sophia's belongings, Dom felt a momentary pang. Not regret for his actions, but acknowledgement of the collateral effects. a child he had briefly believed was his daughter would grow up without his influence. It was an unfortunate necessity, given the circumstances. His phone buzzed with a text from Nolan. Packages delivered. All targets contained. The final phase of Dom's operation was complete. Thomas Montgomery's financial irregularities had been anonymously reported to authorities in 3 countries. Laurel's involvement in Operation Phoenix had been documented and shared with her employer. Preston's photography client list had received subtle warnings about his professional reliability. None would recover easily. None would pose a threat again. The message had been delivered clearly. Crossing Dominic Archer carried consequences that extended far beyond the immediate confrontation. As Dom closed the nursery door, he felt the chapter ending. The betrayal, the counterattack, the resolution, all completed with the precision and thoroughness that had defined his military career. What remained now was to rebuild, a task Dom approached with the same determination that had destroyed his enemies. Leo deserved nothing less than his father's full commitment to creating a secure, stable future. For Dom, that future would be guided by the same principle that had driven his response to Vanessa's betrayal. Protect what matters, eliminate what threatens, and never, ever forget who you really are beneath the civilized exterior. The world had tried to make him forget. Vanessa had mistaken his control for weakness. They had all learned their lesson. Dominic Archer was many things: businessman, father, survivor. But at his core, he remained what he had always been, a man who would protect what was his with absolute, unforgiving efficiency. And that, after all, was the only reputation that truly mattered. Chapter 7. Aftershocks. 6 months after the divorce, Dom sat in his home office reviewing Sentinel Security's quarterly reports. The company had not only recovered from a near miss with their government contracts, but had expanded into new markets under Dom's refocused leadership. The living room downstairs echoed with the sound of Leo's laughter as he played video games with Nolan, who had become a regular visitor and something of an uncle figure to the boy. Life had found a new rhythm. Leo spent weekdays with Dom and alternate weekends with Vanessa under the supervision of a court-appointed guardian. The arrangement had been working well enough, though Dom remained vigilant, monitoring these visits through discreet channels to ensure Vanessa didn't attempt to manipulate their son again. A knock at his office door interrupted Dom's thoughts. Leo stood in the doorway, his expression serious. "Dad, can we talk?" Dom closed his laptop immediately. "Of course, buddy. What's on your mind?" Leo settled into the leather chair across from Dom's desk, his legs swinging slightly as they didn't quite reach the floor. At 9 now, he was growing taller, but still retained the innocence Dom fought fiercely to protect. "Mom wants me to come live with her and Sophia," Leo said without preamble. "She says her new apartment has a room all set up for me, with a better gaming system than the one here." Dom kept his expression neutral despite the surge of cold anger he felt. "I see. And what did you tell her?" "That I like living with you," Leo replied simply, "and that I don't need a fancy gaming system to be happy." Pride warmed Dom's chest. That was a mature response. "She got mad," Leo continued. "Said you've turned me against her and that you're keeping me away from my sister." Dom leaned forward, choosing his words carefully. "Leo, your mother is going through a difficult time adjusting to our new situation. Sometimes when people are hurt or angry, they say things that aren't fair or true." "I know," Leo said with a wisdom beyond his years. "She does that a lot now." "Has she said other things that bothered you?" Dom asked, his voice gentle but alert. Leo shifted uncomfortably. "She says you're dangerous, that you hurt people who cross you, that you destroyed her life because you're controlling and can't stand losing." Each accusation hit Dom like a physical blow, not because they were true in the way Vanessa meant them, but because they held a kernel of truth he'd never wanted Leo to confront. He had dismantled Vanessa's conspiracy with ruthless efficiency. He had ensured that everyone involved paid a price. He had been utterly unforgiving. "Leo," Dom began carefully, "when people try to hurt you or the people you love, you have a right to defend yourself. Remember when we talked about this during the divorce?" Leo nodded. "You said it was like in my games, the bad guys get defeated." "That's right. Your mother made choices that could have hurt both of us very badly. I did what was necessary to protect us, but I never did anything illegal or wrong. The last part wasn't entirely true, but Dom justified the lie as protection for Leo's innocence. I know, Dad, Leo said with unexpected certainty. That's why I told her I wanted to stay with you. You always tell me the truth, even when it's hard. Relief washed over Dom. Despite Vanessa's attempts to poison their son against him, Leo's trust remained intact. There's something else, Leo added hesitantly. Mom's new boyfriend was there. He kept calling me sport and trying to give me high fives. It was weird. New boyfriend. This was the first Dom had heard of anyone new in Vanessa's life. His intelligence network had apparently missed this development. His name's Bryant. He's loud and tries too hard to be my friend. Mom says he's going to be around a lot from now on. Dom filed this information away for immediate investigation. How does that make you feel? Leo shrugged. I don't know. I don't like him, but Mom seems happier when he's there. Less angry. Well, that could be a good thing, Dom suggested, though his instincts were already raising alarms. If someone makes your mom happy, that might make your visits more pleasant. Later, after Leo had gone to bed, Dom initiated a thorough background check on Bryant Walcott, Vanessa's new companion. The preliminary results were concerning. 2 previous restraining orders from ex-girlfriends, a dismissed assault charge, and significant gambling debts. Not the kind of man Dom wanted anywhere near his son. Dom's first instinct was to confront Vanessa directly, to demand she end the relationship or lose her visitation rights entirely. But strategic thinking prevailed. Direct confrontation would only reinforce Vanessa's narrative that Dom was controlling and vindictive. A more subtle approach was required. The next morning, Dom called Ava Brennan, the court-appointed supervisor for Leo's visits with Vanessa. Ms. Brennan, I understand there was an unauthorized adult present during Leo's visitation this weekend. Dom began, his tone professional but concerned. Mr. Archer, I assure you that Mr. Walcott's presence was brief and supervised. Ava replied defensively. Ms. Archer informed me he would be stopping by to drop off some groceries. I didn't see any harm in a brief introduction. The custody agreement specifically states that all adults who will have contact with Leo must be vetted and approved in advance, Dom reminded her. Given Mr. Walcott's history of domestic violence accusations, I'm concerned about your judgment in this matter. Ava's shocked silence confirmed she hadn't bothered to research Bryant's background. I wasn't aware of any such history. I've forwarded the relevant documents to your agency supervisor and the family court. In the meantime, I trust you'll ensure no further unauthorized contact occurs. By that afternoon, Vanessa was calling Dom in a fury. He let the call go to voicemail, preferring to have her rage documented rather than engaging directly. Her message was exactly what he expected: accusations of spying, controlling behavior, and manipulation of the court system. Dom responded with a brief text. Leo's safety is my only concern. All adults in his life must meet the standards set by the court. This isn't personal. It was, of course, entirely personal, but the veneer of professional concern served Dom's purposes better than open hostility. 3 days later, Bryant Walcott was pulled over for a routine traffic stop that revealed an outstanding warrant for unpaid gambling debts in Nevada. He was taken into custody, and Vanessa was left to explain to Leo why her friend wouldn't be around anymore. Dom hadn't orchestrated the traffic stop directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, he'd simply ensured that Bryant's outstanding warrants were properly updated in the national database that local police checked routinely. A small domino that, once tipped, fell exactly as anticipated. When Leo returned from his next weekend visit, he seemed lighter, more relaxed. Bryant's gone, he announced as Dom drove him home. Mom says he wasn't right for our family anyway. How do you feel about that? Dom asked carefully. Good, Leo admitted. He was always looking at my iPad when I wasn't using it, like he was checking stuff. Dom's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Did you tell your mom about that? Leo nodded. She said I was imagining things. But I wasn't, Dad. I caught him twice. That evening, Dom initiated another layer of security protocols for all their devices and accounts. If Bryant had been attempting to access Leo's electronics, the target wasn't the 9-year-old's game progress. It was information about Dom, about Sentinel security, about the divorce settlement. It seemed Vanessa hadn't learned her lesson after all. She was still looking for leverage, still attempting to find a weakness in Dom's armor. The realization settled like ice in Dom's veins. He had been monitoring but not actively countering, believing the threat contained rather than eliminated. That had been a mistake, one he wouldn't make again. "Nolan," Dom said when his friend answered his late-night call, "I need a complete surveillance refresh on Vanessa. Digital, physical, financial, everything. There's something happening we're missing." "You think she's making another play?" Nolan asked, immediately alert. "I know she is. The question is what, and with whom?" The enhanced surveillance yielded results within days. Vanessa had been in contact with Thomas Montgomery, who had resurfaced in Singapore after fleeing the country 6 months earlier. Their communications were carefully encrypted, but not carefully enough to evade Wilson's expertise. The content of those communications was alarming. Thomas had apparently rebuilt some of his financial resources and was offering Vanessa an opportunity for appropriate compensation for her losses if she could provide certain proprietary information about Sentinel Security's new government contracts. Corporate espionage. Vanessa was contemplating crossing the line from personal betrayal to federal crime. Dom's initial impulse was swift, decisive action. Contact federal authorities, present the evidence, have Vanessa arrested for conspiracy to commit espionage. It would solve the problem permanently. She would lose custody entirely, possibly face years in prison. But as he reviewed the surveillance logs more carefully, Dom noticed something important. Vanessa hadn't actually agreed. She was hesitant, expressing concern about the risks, especially regarding Leo. Her final message to Thomas had been telling. "I've already lost too much. Leo is all I have left. I can't risk losing him completely. There has to be another way." For the first time since discovering her betrayal in the hospital room, Dom felt a flicker of uncertainty. Vanessa's concern for Leo seemed genuine, not tactical. Could she have finally recognized the consequences of her actions? Dom decided to test this theory with a calculated move. The next day, he contacted Vanessa directly. "Leo tells me he'd like to bring Sophia to his baseball game this weekend," Dom said when she answered, his voice casual. "I thought I could pick them both up. Give you a few hours to yourself." The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. This would be the first time Dom had offered to have any contact with Sophia since the divorce. "Why?" Vanessa finally asked, suspicion evident in her voice. "Because despite everything, she's Leo's sister," Dom replied simply. "He misses her." Another long pause. "You've never shown any interest in Sophia before." "I'm not doing this for you, Vanessa. I'm doing it for Leo." After a moment, Vanessa agreed, though her tone remained wary. The weekend arrangement would provide a perfect opportunity to assess whether she was truly reconsidering her alliance with Thomas Montgomery or merely hesitating before committing to another attack. The baseball game was on Saturday afternoon, a little league match where Leo played second base with enthusiasm, if not particular skill. Dom arrived at Vanessa's apartment at noon, prepared for hostility. Instead, he found her surprisingly composed, with Sophia dressed in a miniature version of Leo's team jersey. At 15 months old, the little girl was walking now, babbling excitedly as Leo showed her his baseball glove. "Thank you for doing this," Vanessa said quietly as they watched the children interact. "He really has missed her." Dom nodded, observing Vanessa carefully. The polished perfection she had always maintained was somewhat diminished now. Her apartment was modest, her clothing simpler, her makeup minimal. The social media influencer persona had apparently been another casualty of the divorce. "How are you, Vanessa?" he asked, genuine curiosity mixing with his tactical assessment. She looked surprised by the question. "Managing," she finally said. "It's been an adjustment." "And Preston? Is he involved with Sophia?" A flash of the old bitterness crossed Vanessa's face. "Minimally. He sends child support and visits once a month." Turns out he wasn't father material after all. Dom absorbed this without comment. Preston's retreat from fatherhood wasn't surprising. The man had consistently proven himself to be self-centered and weak. "We should go," Dom said, checking his watch. "Leo needs to be at the field early for warm-ups." As Dom drove with both children in the back seat, Leo chattering excitedly to Sophia about baseball, he found himself reconsidering his approach to Vanessa. If she was indeed pulling back from Thomas Montgomery's scheme out of concern for Leo, perhaps there was a less destructive solution than the legal hammer he'd been preparing to drop. After the game, which Leo's team lost spectacularly but joyfully, Dom returned the children to Vanessa's apartment. As Leo took Sophia inside to show her his old toys that he kept at his mother's house, Dom and Vanessa had a moment alone. "Thomas Montgomery contacted you," Dom said without preamble, watching her face pale with shock. "He wants information about Sentinel's contracts. Information that would constitute federal crimes if you provided it." Vanessa's hand gripped the doorframe, her knuckles white. "You're still watching me," she whispered. "I will always protect what's mine," Dom replied evenly. "The question is whether you've learned anything from the past year." Vanessa looked away, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I told him no. I know, but he'll try again. Men like Thomas don't give up easily when money is involved." "What do you want from me, Dominic?" Vanessa asked, suddenly sounding exhausted. "Haven't you taken enough? My home, my lifestyle, my reputation, what else is there?" Dom studied her, seeing past the bitterness to the fear beneath. "I want you to be a good mother to Leo. That's all I've ever wanted. Everything else, the divorce terms, the custody arrangement, those were consequences of your choices, not my vengeance." "You expect me to believe that?" Vanessa scoffed. "After how you dismantled everything and everyone connected to me? I expect you to understand that there's a difference between punishment and protection," Dom corrected. "I did what was necessary to protect myself and Leo from your scheme. Nothing more, nothing less." Vanessa was silent for a long moment. "And now? Are you going to report me to the FBI for even talking to Thomas?" "That depends on you," Dom said, his voice level. "If you've truly chosen Leo over whatever Thomas is offering, then we can move forward. If not," he let the implication hang in the air. "I have chosen Leo," Vanessa said firmly, looking him in the eye for the first time. "Whatever you think of me, I love my son." Dom nodded, decision made. "Then prove it. Cut all contact with Thomas, and I'll consider expanding your visitation rights. Leo needs his mother, a mother focused on his well-being, not on revenge or money." "You do that?" Vanessa asked, disbelief evident in her voice. "After everything?" "For Leo, yes." Dom turned to leave, then paused. "But Vanessa, understand this. My forgiveness has limits. Cross me again, endanger Leo again, and there won't be another chance. I'll make what happened last time look like a gentle warning." The threat wasn't delivered with heat or anger, but with the same calm certainty that had characterized all of Dom's actions. It wasn't emotion, it was simply fact. As Dom drove home that evening, he considered the day's developments. Vanessa's apparent change of heart might be genuine, or it might be another deception. Time would tell. But for Leo's sake, Dom was willing to allow for the possibility of redemption, closely monitored redemption, with contingency plans in place should Vanessa revert to her old patterns. That night, as Dom tucked Leo into bed, his son was unusually thoughtful. "Dad," he said sleepily, "it was nice having Sophia at my game today. Like we were still sort of family." Dom smoothed Leo's hair back from his forehead. "Families come in all different forms, buddy. What matters is that the people in them love each other and look out for each other." "Do you think Mom still loves us?" Leo asked, the question piercing in its innocence. Dom considered his answer carefully. "I think she loves you very much in her own way, and she's trying to be better at showing it. But she doesn't love you anymore." "No, she doesn't," Dom confirmed gently. "And that's okay. Sometimes people grow apart." Leo's eyes were already closing as he murmured, "I'm glad you didn't grow apart from me." "Never," Dom promised, kissing his son's forehead. "Not in a million years." As Dom left Leo's room, his phone buzzed with a text from Wilson. Encrypted communication from V to TM just intercepted. Text reads, "I'm out. Don't contact me again. My son comes first now." For the first time in over a year, Dom felt something like cautious optimism about Vanessa's place in their lives. Not trust, never that again, but perhaps a workable arrangement that prioritized Leo's well-being over old grievances. It wasn't forgiveness. Dom's nature didn't allow for that. But it was perhaps the beginning of a different kind of resolution, one that looked forward rather than back, that built something new rather than merely avenging what had been destroyed. For Leo's sake, Dom was willing to try. But as he activated the house's security system for the night, he knew that beneath his willingness to accommodate Vanessa's apparent change of heart, the vigilance remained. The protection of what was his would never waver, never soften. That was simply who Dominic Archer was, and who he would always be. Chapter 8. The Devil's Bargain. 3 weeks after the baseball game, Dom received an unexpected call from Quinn Montgomery. His former commander and business partner rarely reached out directly unless the matter was urgent. "We need to talk," Quinn said without preamble. "In person. The usual place, 2 hours." The usual place was a private room above an unremarkable Irish pub in South Boston, where Sentinel Security's most sensitive discussions took place away from potential electronic surveillance. Dom arranged for Leo to spend the afternoon with Nolan and drove to the meeting with a growing sense of unease. Quinn was already waiting when Dom arrived, nursing a glass of scotch despite the early hour. At 62, the former Special Forces colonel still maintained a military bearing, his silver hair cropped short, his posture impeccable even when seated. "Thomas Montgomery is back in the country," Quinn announced as soon as Dom sat down. "He landed at a private airfield in New Hampshire 3 days ago." Dom absorbed this news without visible reaction. Vanessa cut ties with him. He must have found another angle. Quinn's eyes narrowed slightly. "You knew she was in contact with him?" "I know everything concerning potential threats to my family or business," Dom replied simply. "She rejected his approach, so I consider the matter handled for the moment." "It's not handled." Quinn pushed a folder across the table. "This was delivered to my home address yesterday. Not my office, not Sentinel HQ, my private residence." Dom opened the folder to find a series of photographs. They showed Quinn in various locations, exiting a building in Dubai, meeting with a man in Istanbul, accepting a package in Beirut. All locations where Sentinel had conducted operations that existed in the gray areas of international law. "These were taken by one of our own teams," Dom observed, recognizing the quality and angles of the surveillance photos. "Someone with access to our operational archives." Quinn nodded grimly. "Thomas has found a mole inside Sentinel. Someone with high-level access." The implications were immediate and severe. Sentinel Security operated within legal boundaries for its public-facing contracts, but a significant portion of their revenue came from discrete operations for government agencies and private clients that required absolute confidentiality. Exposure would mean the end of the company and possible criminal charges for both Dom and Quinn. "What's the demand?" Dom asked, knowing there would be one. $10 million and our permanent withdrawal from several key markets where Thomas is attempting to rebuild his business interests. Quinn's expression hardened. "And a personal demand for you. Full custody of Leo transferred to Vanessa." Dom's blood went cold. "Vanessa's involved after all." "That's what I initially assumed," Quinn agreed. "But look at the last page." The final document in the folder was a surveillance photo of Vanessa's apartment building. The timestamp showed it was taken just 2 days earlier. Vanessa was visible through her living room window, talking on the phone. The message scrawled across the bottom of the photo was chilling. "She's next if you don't comply. Her or the boy." It's not a partnership, Dom realized. It's a threat against her as well. "Thomas is out for maximum damage," Quinn confirmed. "He doesn't just want money or business advantage. He wants revenge against everyone he holds responsible for his downfall. You, me, and apparently Vanessa for failing to deliver what she promised." Dom's mind was already racing through scenarios, cataloging vulnerabilities, identifying potential countermeasures. "The mole is our first priority. We need to identify and neutralize that threat immediately." "Already in progress. I've initiated protocol blackout. All systems locked down, all personnel under review, communication restricted to secure channels only." Protocol blackout was Sentinel's most extreme security measure, designed to isolate and identify internal threats. It was disruptive to operations, but thorough. Timeline, Dom asked. 72 hours maximum to identify the source. But Thomas will move before then. The deadline for our response is tomorrow at midnight. Dom stood, decision made. Implement full protection protocols for your family. I'll do the same for Leo and Vanessa. Quinn looked surprised. Vanessa? After everything? She's Leo's mother, and she's being targeted because of her connection to me. Dom replied simply. I protect what's mine, even the parts that have betrayed me. As Dom left the meeting, he called Nolan, instructing him to take Leo directly to the lake house safe location rather than returning home. Next, he contacted crews to establish surveillance on Vanessa's apartment. Finally, he reached out to Vanessa herself. We need to talk, he said when she answered. It's urgent. I'm on my way to your apartment now. What's happening? Vanessa asked, alarm evident in her voice. I'll explain when I get there. For now, stay inside, keep Sophia with you, and don't open the door for anyone but me. When Dom arrived at Vanessa's apartment 20 minutes later, she met him at the door with Sophia on her hip, her expression a mixture of fear and defiance. What's going on, Dominic? Where's Leo? Leo is safe, Dom assured her, stepping inside and immediately checking the apartment's sight lines and potential vulnerabilities. The corner unit on the 4th floor had decent security, but nothing that would stop a determined professional. He's with Nolan at a secure location. A secure. Vanessa broke off, realization dawning. This is about Thomas, isn't it? Dom turned to her, studying her reaction carefully. He's back in the country, and he's made threats against both you and Leo. Vanessa's face paled as she clutched Sophia tighter. I told him I was out. I cut all contact weeks ago, just like I promised you. I know, Dom acknowledged, surprising even himself with his certainty in her truthfulness. This isn't about recruiting you anymore. It's about punishing everyone involved in his downfall, including you for failing him. Vanessa sank onto the couch, visibly shaken. What does he want? Money, business concessions, and full custody of Leo transferred to you. Vanessa's head snapped up. I never asked for that. I've accepted the custody arrangement. I wouldn't. I believe you, Dom interrupted, the admission clearly startling her. Thomas is acting alone now, using leverage against all of us. For a moment, Vanessa looked genuinely moved by Dom's trust, however limited. Then practicality reasserted itself. What do we do? You and Sophia need to come with me to a secure location. My team is already monitoring the building, but this apartment isn't safe enough if Thomas has hired professionals. Vanessa nodded, already moving toward the bedroom. I'll pack a bag for Sophia. How long will we be gone? Until the threat is neutralized, Dom replied, not sugarcoating the situation. Pack for at least a week. While Vanessa prepared, Dom conducted a thorough sweep of the apartment, checking for surveillance devices or signs of previous intrusion. He found nothing obvious, but the hairs on the back of his neck were standing up, the familiar warning sensation from his operative days that something wasn't right. We need to move quickly, he told Vanessa when she returned with a small suitcase and Sophia's diaper bag. Stay close to me, keep Sophia covered, and move directly to the vehicle when I say so. Dom's security team had positioned an armored SUV in the building's underground parking garage. As they descended in the elevator, Dom maintained hypervigilance, one hand near the concealed weapon beneath his jacket, the other ready to shield Vanessa and Sophia if necessary. The garage was quiet, too quiet for mid-afternoon. Dom scanned the dimly lit space as the elevator doors opened, noting the absence of the usual sounds of residents coming and going. Wait, he instructed, holding Vanessa back. Something's wrong. A moment later, his suspicion was confirmed as the lights in the garage flickered and went out, leaving only the emergency exit signs glowing red in the darkness. Back in the elevator, Dom ordered, but even as Vanessa turned, the elevator doors slid closed behind them and the car began ascending again. Someone's controlling the building systems, Dom realized, guiding Vanessa and Sophia toward a concrete support column for minimal cover. We need an alternate exit. His phone vibrated with a text from crews. 3 hostiles entered garage level. Armed. Building security disabled. Back up 2 minutes out. Dom made a split-second decision. Change of plans. We're going up, not out. He led them to the emergency stairwell, ascending quickly but carefully, Vanessa following close behind with Sophia clutched tightly against her chest. The baby, sensing the tension, remained unusually quiet. "Where are we going?" Vanessa whispered as they passed the fifth-floor landing. "The roof," Dom replied. "My team will extract us from there." 3 more flights of stairs brought them to the roof access door. Dom paused, listening for any indication of an ambush on the other side, then carefully pushed the door open. The roof was clear, a flat expanse of gravel and ventilation equipment beneath the afternoon sun. Dom guided Vanessa to a position behind an air conditioning unit, out of sight from the stairwell and with a clear view of the approaching streets. "Cruise," Dom spoke into his communications device. "Roof extraction required. 3 packages, priority 1. "Copy that," came the response. Helicopter diverted. ETA 8 minutes. Dom turned to Vanessa, who was pale but composed, her arms steady around Sophia. "Helicopter will be here in 8 minutes. We hold this position until then." "Are they coming for us?" Vanessa asked, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Yes," Dom confirmed, checking his weapon. "But they'll have to come through that door, and I'll be waiting for them." Vanessa's expression shifted from fear to something like determination. The question surprised Dom. The Vanessa he had known, the calculating socialite who had plotted his downfall, wouldn't have asked how to help. She would have focused solely on her own survival. "If someone other than me or my team approaches you, use this." Dom handed her a small canister of military-grade pepper spray. "Aim for the eyes, then run. The helicopter will have Sentinel personnel aboard who will recognize you." Vanessa took the canister, her fingers briefly touching Dom's. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, "for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need to say it." Before Dom could respond, the roof access door crashed open. 2 men in tactical gear emerged, weapons raised. Dom was already moving, pushing Vanessa and Sophia lower behind cover as he fired 2 precise shots. The first attacker fell immediately. The second managed to get off a wild burst of fire before Dom's third shot found its mark. The bullets pinged harmlessly against the metal housing of the AC unit, well away from where Vanessa and Sophia were sheltered. "Stay down," Dom instructed, moving to secure the doorway. The sound of approaching helicopter rotors was now audible in the distance. Dom checked the 2 fallen attackers, confirming they were incapacitated. They weren't dead. Dom's shots had been carefully placed to disable rather than kill, minimizing complications with law enforcement later. A quick search yielded no identification, but their equipment was high-end military grade. Not local thugs, but professional mercenaries. 3 minutes to extraction, Dom reported back to Vanessa. "We're clear for now." But even as he spoke, his instincts screamed a warning. The attack had been too straightforward, too easily repelled. Men of this caliber would have had a more sophisticated approach, unless. "It's a diversion," Dom realized, spinning back toward Vanessa just as the roof access door at the opposite end of the building, the service stairwell he'd overlooked, burst open. A third attacker emerged, already targeting Vanessa. Dom's reaction was instantaneous, his body moving on combat-honed instinct. 3 rapid shots, each finding their mark despite the distance. The attacker crumpled, his weapon clattering across the gravel. But not before he'd gotten off a single shot. Dom turned to see Vanessa clutching her arm, blood seeping between her fingers. Sophia was wailing now, frightened by the gunfire and her mother's pain. "How bad?" Dom demanded, reaching her side in seconds. "Just a graze," Vanessa grimaced, her face pale but her voice steady. "I'll be fine. Sophia's not hurt." Dom quickly examined the wound, a deep graze that would need stitches but wasn't life-threatening. He applied a field dressing from the compact medical kit he always carried, securing it tightly around Vanessa's upper arm. "The helicopter's almost here," he assured her, the sound of rotors now much closer. "You'll have medical attention in minutes." Vanessa looked up at him, her eyes clear despite the pain. "You saved us. After everything I did, you still came for me. I told you, Dom said simply. I protect what's mine. That includes Leo's mother and sister, regardless of the past. The helicopter appeared over the edge of the building, hovering as it prepared to land on the designated area of the roof. Dom helped Vanessa to her feet, supporting her as they moved toward the aircraft with Sophia still clutched protectively in her uninjured arm. As they reached the helicopter, Dom's phone vibrated with an incoming call from Quinn. He answered immediately. We've identified the mole. Quinn's voice was tense with controlled fury. It's Lawson. Michael Lawson was Sentinel's head of digital security, a position that gave him access to almost all operational data and surveillance archives. He'd been with the company for 5 years, thoroughly vetted and seemingly loyal. Capture, not eliminate, Dom instructed, knowing Quinn's military instincts would lean toward the permanent solution. We need to know everything he shared with Thomas. Already in progress. But there's something else. Thomas's location has been confirmed. He's at the Meridian Hotel downtown, Suite 1240. And he's not alone. Who's with him? Dom asked, though he already suspected the answer. Preston Davenport. The revelation sent a surge of cold anger through Dom. Preston, weak, cowardly Preston, had aligned himself with Thomas after all. Perhaps seeking revenge for his own losses, perhaps simply following the money. Either way, he had made his final mistake. Secure Lawson, Dom ordered. I'll handle Thomas and Preston personally. As Dom helped Vanessa and Sophia board the helicopter, he made his decision. Vanessa and the baby would go to the lake house with Leo, protected by Nolan and a full security team. Dom would deal with Thomas Montgomery and Preston Davenport, ending the threat once and for all. Where are we going? Vanessa asked as Dom secured her harness, the helicopter lifting off from the roof. Somewhere safe, Dom assured her. Leo is already there waiting. Relief washed over Vanessa's face at the mention of their son. And you? Are you coming with us? Dom's expression hardened. I have business to attend to first. Thomas and Preston need to understand that this ends now. Fear flickered in Vanessa's eyes, but not for herself. Be careful, she said quietly, surprising him again. Leo needs you. For a moment, Dom saw a glimpse of the woman he had once believed Vanessa to be, someone capable of putting their son's needs above her own desires or grievances. It changed nothing about their past, but offered a glimmer of hope for a more functional future for Leo's sake. I'll be back by morning, Dom promised, stepping away as the helicopter gained altitude. As the aircraft carried Vanessa and Sophia to safety, Dom contacted Cruz, who was waiting with a vehicle on the street below. Meridian Hotel, Dom instructed as he climbed into the passenger seat. And I'll need the special equipment from the vault. Cruz nodded, understanding immediately. This wouldn't be a confrontation managed through legal channels or corporate maneuvering. This would be handled as Dom had been trained to handle high-value targets in his military days, with precision, efficiency, and finality. Thomas Montgomery had made his final move. Now it was time for Dom to make his. Chapter 9. Zero Sum. The Meridian Hotel's luxurious facade concealed a building with surprisingly lax security, a fact Dom had confirmed during the drive from Vanessa's apartment. With Cruz coordinating from a surveillance position in the hotel bar and Wilson monitoring the building's security systems remotely, Dom moved through the lobby with the confident bearing of a regular guest. Suite 1240 was on the top floor, a corner unit with panoramic views of the city. According to the hotel's reservation system, which Wilson had accessed within minutes, the suite had been booked for a week under the name William Barrett, an alias Thomas Montgomery had used in the past. Dom took the service elevator to the 11th floor, then the emergency stairs to the 12th, avoiding the cameras that monitored the main elevators and hallways. The equipment bag slung over his shoulder contained everything he needed: specialized entry tools, non-lethal incapacitation devices, and, if necessary, more permanent solutions. 2 heat signatures in the main room of the suite, Wilson reported through the secure earpiece. Security system is standard hotel grade. I've looped the hallway cameras for the next 10 minutes. Dom positioned himself beside the suite's door, extracting a device that would override the electronic lock without triggering an alert. Years of military operations and private security work had honed his skills for precisely this type of infiltration. Accessing now, Dom murmured as the device cycled through combinations. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Dom pocketed the device, drew a non-lethal tranquilizer gun, and prepared to enter. The element of surprise would be critical. Going dark, he informed his team, then silently opened the door. The suite's entry foyer was unoccupied, soft voices drifting from the main living area around the corner. Dom moved with practiced silence, his footsteps absorbed by the plush carpet. As he approached the corner, the voices became clearer. Not assured by her promises, Preston, Thomas Montgomery was saying, his distinctive voice carrying the same arrogant tone Dom remembered. Archer neutralized your last attempt without even breaking stride. This is different, Preston insisted, a nervous edge to his voice. Vanessa will cooperate when she understands her options. She wants Leo back full-time, and this is her only path to making that happen. Dom paused, assembling the pieces. Preston wasn't just working with Thomas. He was actively trying to manipulate Vanessa into participating, likely hoping to rebuild his relationship with her through shared custody of Leo and Sophia. And if she doesn't cooperate? Thomas asked. Preston's response chilled Dom to the core. Then we use the contingency plan. Archer can't protect the boy if he's dealing with federal charges. The evidence Lawson provided is enough to trigger an investigation, freeze his assets, and create the perfect opportunity to move against him physically. You're suggesting we target a child? Thomas's voice carried a note of disbelief. That wasn't part of the plan, Preston. I want revenge, but there are lines even I won't cross. It's not about hurting Leo, Preston argued. It's about creating leverage. Archer's weakness is his son. Always has been. Dom had heard enough. He rounded the corner in a smooth motion, the tranquilizer gun raised and aimed. Thomas Montgomery sat in an armchair by the window, a glass of scotch in hand. He looked older than Dom remembered, the past year having carved deep lines into his face. Preston stood by the minibar, his back to the entrance, unknowingly presenting a perfect target. Dom fired twice in rapid succession. The tranquilizer darts found their marks, one in Preston's upper back, the other in Thomas's thigh as he began to rise from his chair. Both men collapsed within seconds, the fast-acting sedative ensuring they would remain unconscious for at least 20 minutes. Targets secured, Dom reported to his team. Proceeding to Phase 2. Working efficiently, Dom secured both men with specialized restraints, positioning them in chairs facing each other. From his equipment bag, he removed a small device that would create a localized signal disruption field, preventing any recording or transmission from within the suite. As the device activated, Dom administered the counteragent to Thomas first, knowing the older man would be more useful for immediate information. Thomas regained consciousness with a gasping breath, his eyes wild until they focused on Dom standing calmly before him. Archer, Thomas wheezed, testing his restraints and finding them immovable. I should have expected this. Yes, you should have, Dom agreed, his voice coldly professional, especially after our last encounter. I would have thought you'd learn the consequences of targeting me or my family. Thomas's expression hardened. Consequences? You destroyed my career, my reputation, my financial security, all because your wife couldn't keep her marriage vows. No, Dom corrected. All because you chose to weaponize a personal matter for your own revenge against Quinn Montgomery. You made it business. I responded accordingly. Thomas glanced at Preston's still unconscious form. And what will your response be now? Murder? In a hotel suite registered under a known alias of mine? Not very subtle for the great Dominic Archer. Dom smiled thinly. Who said anything about murder? I'm here to negotiate. This clearly wasn't what Thomas had expected. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. Negotiate what? Terms of your permanent retirement. Dom explained, pulling up a chair to sit directly in front of Thomas. You're going to sign over all evidence you've collected through Lawson. You're going to transfer any remaining copies to my team. And you're going to leave the country. Permanently this time. with the understanding that any future attempt against me, my family, or my company will result in consequences far beyond what you've experienced so far. Thomas laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. And why would I agree to those terms when I still hold significant leverage? Lawson provided enough material to bury you, Archer, even if you've managed to capture him. Because of the alternative, Dom replied simply, removing a small flash drive from his pocket. This contains comprehensive evidence of your illegal activities across 3 continents, including your recent recruitment of mercenaries to attack Vanessa's apartment. I imagine the federal authorities would be very interested in adding attempted kidnapping and assault with deadly weapons to your growing list of charges. Thomas's confidence wavered visibly. You're bluffing. You wouldn't involve federal authorities when your own operations exist in the same gray areas. I wouldn't normally, Dom acknowledged. But to protect my son, there's nothing I wouldn't do, no line I wouldn't cross. The absolute certainty in Dom's voice penetrated Thomas's bravado. The older man slumped slightly in his restraints, recognition dawning that he had miscalculated once again. What about him? Thomas nodded toward Preston, who was beginning to stir as the sedative wore off. He's more invested in this than I am at this point. His obsession with getting back into Vanessa's life has clouded his judgment entirely. Dom turned his attention to Preston as the younger man regained consciousness, confusion giving way to fear as he registered his situation. Preston and I will have a separate conversation, Dom said, his tone making it clear that conversation would be considerably less pleasant than the current negotiation. As Preston became fully aware, his reaction was predictable: panic, followed by desperate bargaining. Dom, listen, this isn't what it looks like, he babbled. I was trying to gather intelligence on Thomas's plan to warn you. I was going to call you tomorrow with everything I'd learned. Is that why you suggested using my son as leverage? Dom asked, his voice dangerously soft. As part of your intelligence gathering. Preston's face drained of color. You heard that? No, I was just saying what Thomas wanted to hear. I would never actually. Stop lying, Preston, Thomas interrupted with disgust. You're the one who suggested targeting the boy. You're the one who insisted Vanessa would cooperate if properly motivated. At least have the dignity to own your decisions. Preston fell silent, his eyes darting between Dom and Thomas, recognizing the hopelessness of his position. Dom stood, moving to a small table where he placed 2 documents side by side. Here are your options, gentlemen. This first document is a complete non-disclosure agreement coupled with a relocation agreement. Sign it, and you receive a one-time payment sufficient to establish a new life far from here, with the understanding that any violation means immediate legal and personal consequences. He gestured to the second document. This one authorizes my team to release all evidence of your respective crimes to federal authorities, Interpol, and several private parties who have outstanding grievances against you both. The choice is yours, but be aware, this offer expires in 5 minutes, after which the second option becomes the only option. Thomas and Preston exchanged glances, the calculation visible in both their expressions. It was Thomas who broke first, his survivor's instinct recognizing the better path. Release me, and I'll sign the first one, he said grudgingly. I know when I'm beaten, Archer. Unlike our friend Preston here, I don't harbor illusions about outwitting you. Dom loosened Thomas's restraints enough to allow him to sign, watching carefully for any sudden movements. Thomas signed with a flourish, his expression bitter but resigned. You won't see me again, Thomas promised as Dom secured the document. I value my life too much to risk a third confrontation. Wise decision, Dom acknowledged, then turned to Preston, who was watching with growing desperation. Please, Dom, Preston begged, I'll sign too. I'll stay away from Vanessa, from Leo, from all of you. I swear it. Dom studied him silently, remembering how this man had slept with his wife, plotted against him, and now had suggested using Leo as a pawn. Everything in Dom's nature called for a more permanent resolution to the Preston problem, one that would ensure he could never threaten Dom's family again. But there was Sophia to consider. Whatever Preston's failings, he was still the girl's biological father. For Leo's sake, for his half-sister's future, Dom would show a restraint that Preston himself had never demonstrated. Sign, Dom ordered, loosening Preston's restraints. But understand this. Unlike Thomas, you don't get to simply disappear. You have a daughter, and Leo has a sister. For their sakes, you will live, but under my terms. Preston signed shakily, looking up with a mix of relief and terror. What are your terms? You will move to Seattle, far enough to prevent accidental encounters with Vanessa or Leo, but still within the country, so you can maintain minimal visitation with Sophia, Dom explained clinically. You will accept a position with a photography studio I control, where your activities and communications will be monitored continuously. You will provide financial support for Sophia, and you will never, under any circumstances, attempt to use her to get to Vanessa, Leo, or me. Preston swallowed hard. And if I refuse? Dom leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Then the evidence of your conspiracy with Thomas, your embezzlement from Vanessa's accounts, and your involvement in today's attack will be delivered to prosecutors. You'll never see freedom again, let alone your daughter. You're giving me a prison either way, Preston muttered. No, Dom corrected coldly. I'm giving you a chance to be a father to Sophia, despite your betrayals. Most men who threaten my son don't receive such generosity. The unspoken threat hung in the air between them. Preston nodded shakily, understanding that his options had narrowed to a single path. I'll take the deal, he whispered. Dom stepped back, satisfied. Thomas watched the exchange with a calculating expression, recognizing the masterful way Dom had neutralized Preston without resorting to violence. You always were efficient, Archer, Thomas remarked. I should have remembered that before targeting you. Yes, you should have, Dom agreed, gathering the signed documents. Cruz will escort you both to separate locations. Thomas, your flight to Singapore leaves in 4 hours. Preston, you'll be on a plane to Seattle tomorrow morning. As Cruz entered the suite to take custody of the two men, Dom delivered his final warning. Remember, gentlemen, this resolution depends entirely on your compliance. Any deviation, any attempt at retaliation, and the consequences will be immediate and irreversible. Both men understood the implicit threat. There would be no third chances. Dom watched as Cruz led them away, then contacted Quinn to confirm the situation was contained. Michael Lawson, the mole within Sentinel Security, had been apprehended and was providing a complete account of the information he had shared with Thomas. With the immediate threat neutralized, Dom could now focus on what mattered most, returning to Leo and ensuring his family's long-term security. The drive to the lake house took just under 2 hours, giving Dom time to process the day's events and make several necessary calls. By the time he arrived, it was nearly midnight, the cabin's lights glowing warmly against the darkness of the surrounding forest. Nolan met him at the door. Everything's secure here, he reported quietly. Leo's asleep. Vanessa's wound has been treated, just a graze, as she said. She's with Sophia in the guest room. Dom nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. And Thomas? Preston, being processed as we speak. Thomas's offshore accounts are already being liquidated and transferred according to your instructions. Preston's relocation is arranged. The Seattle studio has been notified to expect him, and surveillance protocols are in place. Good, Dom acknowledged. And Lawson, Nolan's expression hardened, singing like a canary. Turns out Thomas offered him a partnership in a new security firm they were planning to build using Sentinel's stolen client list. Quinn's handling the debriefing personally. Dom understood what that meant. Quinn's interrogation techniques were thorough and uncompromising. By morning, they would know every detail of the conspiracy and every piece of information that had been compromised. I'm going to check on Leo, Dom said, moving toward the stairs. His son's room was at the end of the hallway, the door slightly ajar to allow the soft glow from the night light to spill into the corridor. Dom entered quietly, careful not to wake the sleeping boy. Leo lay curled on his side, one arm wrapped around his favorite stuffed dinosaur, his face peaceful in sleep. The sight of him, safe and unaware of the day's dangers, reaffirmed Dom's certainty in his actions. Everything he had done, the calculated ruthlessness, the uncompromising response to threats, had been necessary to protect this child. Dom sat gently on the edge of the bed, simply watching Leo breathe. After several minutes, he felt a presence in the doorway and looked up to find Vanessa standing there, her arm bandaged, her expression uncharacteristically subdued. "Is it over?" she asked softly. Dom nodded. "Thomas and Preston have been handled. It won't be a problem again." Relief washed over Vanessa's face. "Thank you," she said, the words seeming to cost her considerable pride. "For coming for us today. For protecting Sophia, even though she's not." She trailed off. "Not my biological daughter," Dom finished for her. "But she's Leo's sister. That makes her family, regardless of DNA." Vanessa studied him in the dimness, as if seeing him clearly for the first time in years. "You really do just see the world in terms of what's yours to protect, don't you? It's never been about vengeance or punishment. Vengeance is emotional. Punishment is subjective," Dom replied. "Protection is absolute." They were silent for a moment, the sleeping child between them a reminder of what had once brought them together and what still connected them despite everything. "What happens now?" Vanessa finally asked. Dom had been considering this question during the drive. The events of the past day had revealed something important. Vanessa was no longer actively working against him. She had rejected Thomas's offer before the attack. She had placed Leo's safety above potential financial gain. These weren't the actions of someone still dedicated to Dom's destruction. "I'm revising our custody arrangement," Dom said. "Supervised visitation will continue for 3 more months. If that goes well, we'll transition to standard visitation, weekends, holidays, part of the summer." Surprise flickered across Vanessa's face. "Why? After everything I did, why would you give me that?" "Because Leo needs his mother," Dom said simply. "And because you've shown that you're capable of putting his needs above your own desires. That's all I've ever asked of you as his parent." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, genuine emotion breaking through the polished facade she typically maintained. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "This isn't forgiveness," Dom corrected her gently but firmly. "This is pragmatism. Leo loves you, and you've demonstrated that you can prioritize his welfare. Those facts matter more than our past." Before Vanessa could respond, Leo stirred, his eyes opening sleepily. "Dad," he murmured. "You're back." "I'm back, buddy," Dom confirmed, smoothing Leo's hair. "Everything's okay now." Leo's gaze shifted to Vanessa in the doorway. "Mom? Is Sophia here too?" "She's sleeping in the next room," Vanessa said, her voice softening as it always did when she spoke to their son. "We're all here and safe." Leo smiled drowsily. "Good. Can we all have breakfast together tomorrow? Like at my baseball game?" Dom and Vanessa exchanged glances, a silent, understanding passing between them. Whatever their personal history, they would present a united front for their son's sake. "Of course we can," Dom assured him. "Now back to sleep. It's late." As Leo drifted off again, Dom rose and followed Vanessa into the hallway, closing the door softly behind them. "There's something else you should know," Dom said, his voice low to avoid disturbing the sleeping children. "Preston will be relocating to Seattle. He'll have limited, supervised visitation with Sophia, but he won't be a presence in your life anymore." Vanessa's eyes widened. I didn't kill him, if that's what you're asking," Dom interrupted. "But I did ensure he'll never be in a position to threaten you, Leo, or Sophia again. The terms of his agreement are non-negotiable and permanent." To his surprise, Vanessa didn't argue or demand details. She simply nodded, acceptance, and perhaps even relief in her expression. "Good. He's not. He's not the man I thought he was." "Few people are," Dom observed, thinking of how dramatically his perception of Vanessa herself had shifted over the past year. "Including me," Vanessa acknowledged, showing a self-awareness Dom hadn't witnessed before. "I've had a lot of time to think since the divorce. About who I became, about the choices I made." Dom studied her, noting the absence of the calculated manipulation that had once characterized her every interaction with him. This seemed like genuine reflection. "People can change," he allowed. "Their actions demonstrate their priorities. And my actions demonstrated how little I valued what we built together, Vanessa concluded. I can't undo that, but I could be a better mother to Leo going forward. That's my priority now. Dom nodded, accepting her statement without offering forgiveness she hadn't explicitly requested. Some betrayals were too profound for forgiveness, but they could be set aside in service of more important considerations, like their son's well-being. Get some rest, he advised. We'll discuss logistics in the morning. As Vanessa returned to the guest room where Sophia slept, Dom descended to the main level of the cabin, finding Nolan waiting with 2 glasses of bourbon. Everything secure upstairs? Nolan asked, handing Dom a glass. As secure as it can be, Dom replied, taking a seat by the fireplace. Vanessa seems different. Nolan raised an eyebrow. Different enough to trust? No, Dom said without hesitation, but different enough to work with for Leo's sake. Trust can be rebuilt in specific areas while maintaining boundaries in others. The Dom Archer doctrine of compartmentalized forgiveness, Nolan observed with a wry smile. Practical as always. Dom didn't smile in return. It's not forgiveness. It's strategic coexistence. Nolan nodded, understanding the distinction. And Thomas? Preston? Should we maintain surveillance? Indefinitely, Dom confirmed. Thomas has financial incentive to comply with our agreement, but his pride might eventually override his self-preservation. Preston is weak-willed and easily influenced. If approached by the right person with the right offer, he could become a problem again. So we watch, Nolan concluded. Like we always do. We watch, we prepare, we protect, Dom agreed, staring into the flames. It's what we do. Later that night, after Nolan had retired to his room and the cabin had fallen silent, Dom stood by the window overlooking the darkened lake. The events that had begun with Leo's whispered warning under a hospital bed had come full circle, ending with Dom's family safe and his enemies neutralized. He had acted as his nature demanded, thoroughly, without mercy for those who threatened what was his. Not with emotional vengeance, but with calculated protection. The distinction was important to Dom, defining how he saw himself and his actions. In the reflection of the window glass, Dom saw not the polished security consultant or the devoted father, but the man beneath those roles, the operative who had survived 3 war zones, the strategist who had built an empire from his specialized skills, the protector who would sacrifice anything and anyone to secure what mattered to him. It was this man who had responded when threats emerged. It was this man who had dismantled his enemies with precision and foresight. And it was this man who would remain vigilant, always watching for the next potential threat, never fully at peace, but always prepared. As dawn broke over the lake, painting the water with streaks of gold and crimson, Dom made a silent promise to himself and to Leo. The world was full of dangers, some obvious, some hidden behind smiles and promises. He would teach his son to recognize both kinds, to protect himself while remaining open to the good the world offered. But most importantly, he would ensure that Leo understood the fundamental truth that had guided Dom through every crisis. When something matters, truly matters, you protect it, completely, uncompromisingly, and without hesitation. That wasn't ruthlessness. That was love, as Dom understood it. And it was the legacy he intended to pass to his son. Epilogue. 1 year later. The baseball arced through the summer air, a perfect hit that sent Leo sprinting toward first base, his face alight with triumph. Dom stood from the bleachers, applauding as his son rounded the base and headed for second, determination in every stride. He's getting really good, Vanessa commented from her seat beside Dom. All that practice with Nolan is paying off. Dom nodded, watching as Leo slid safely into second base amid cheers from his teammates. He's dedicated. Once he sets his mind to something, he doesn't give up. Wonder where he gets that from, Vanessa remarked with a small smile. Their relationship had evolved over the past year into something neither of them could have predicted. Not friendship, exactly, but a functional partnership focused entirely on Leo's well-being. The supervised visitation had transitioned to standard custody arrangements as planned, with Leo spending weekdays with Dom and weekends with Vanessa. On the blanket at Vanessa's feet, 2.5-year-old Sophia played with blocks, occasionally looking up to clap when everyone else did. Despite not being biologically Dom's, he had maintained a connection with her for Leo's sake, ensuring the siblings remained close. The quarterly reports on Thomas Montgomery showed him operating a small security consulting firm in Singapore, keeping well away from Dom's markets and clients. Preston had settled into his controlled existence in Seattle, his communications and activities meticulously monitored, his contact with Sophia limited to monthly video calls and twice-yearly supervised visits. Michael Lawson, the mole from Sentinel Security, had served 6 months in federal prison for corporate espionage before being released to an obscure existence in Arizona. His career in security permanently ended. Sentinel Security had not only recovered, but expanded, with Dom taking a more active role in operations while ensuring he never missed Leo's baseball games or school events. The balance he had found between his professional capabilities and his personal priorities had made him more effective in both realms. As Leo's team took the field for defense, Dom's phone vibrated with a message from Quinn. Potential situation in Dubai. Client compromised. Need your assessment. Once, Dom would have immediately left, prioritizing the crisis over everything else. Now, he texted back, "We'll review files after the game. Team on standby until then." Vanessa noticed the exchange. "Work emergency? Nothing that can't wait 3 innings," Dom replied, pocketing his phone. She studied him with a thoughtfulness that had become more common in their interactions. "You've changed too, you know." The old Dom would have been halfway to the airport by now. "Not changed," Dom corrected. "Evolved. Adapted to new priorities." Leo waved from his position at second base, and Dom waved back, recognizing that this moment, his son's triumphant smile, the simple joy of a summer baseball game, was what all his calculations and counterstrikes had been designed to protect. The world remained full of threats and betrayal.